All right. Welcome, everybody, to another Friday, another day of the David Green Real Estate YouTube Live. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody had a great week. I know we had a tremendous week. We actually were not live this past Friday because David was putting on his big retreat in Scottsdale, Arizona. Probably one of the best real estate experiences I've ever had. Met some really neat people. Just so much information that week, but also just a ton that I learned, not only for myself personally, but just from other people and what they're doing all across the United States. So welcome to everybody who's here. We have a couple topics that we're going to be jumping in and talking about tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about David's new book that's coming out, some pretty exciting things. Going to be talking a little bit about personal finance, budgeting, financial independence, what goes into that, some of the changes that David's kind of making in his life and the changes that I made in my life. And then we're also going to be talking about loan products. And specifically, I don't know if you guys heard, but there was another rate increase with the Fed. And so we're going to be trying to get Christian Batchelder here as well, David's loan partner over at the One Brokerage. Mickey, what is going up, my man? I see you. For those of you that don't know Mickey, he is a pool shark, man. He is a great pool player. He was somebody who came along to the David Green retreat. Honestly, David, I think one of my most favorite parts about the retreat, I've said this before, and I was talking today with Katie here in the office, was it's one thing to do like a mastermind and you meet people in a Zoom, or it's one thing to meet, people at a conference, but when you actually spend time with each other at a retreat, you actually get to know people a little bit more, and you can kind of build these inside jokes with them. You can kind of build this community and this relationship with them. So super cool opportunity that we had this last week. What were your thoughts on the retreat, David?
First off, I thought Mickey and I were going to end up in a battle of the champions, which luckily was avoided because I don't know if that house could have handled it. It looked like we were on a collision course, but we ended up on the same team, which frankly wasn't fair, I think, to anybody else. I don't know how that was allowed, but that was good. Mickey was good at pool. He also has a addicting accent. I caught myself speaking in a Russian accent for half of the trip, probably because I can't hear it and not do it. That was when I was talking, because I lost my voice about day 2 from all of the content that was being provided. So it was very difficult. Like, it's just exhausting. You're sleeping and not as much as you normally do. You're performing the whole time. You're pouring into people. I think some of the feedback that stood out to me was people said, like, I don't hear this type of information being given. It's not your standard. Let me just say this, guys. In general, I think the desire that humans have for the quick answer, just tell me the strategy, just tell me where to get the deal, just tell me how to analyze it, and I just want to go buy it and be done. Is it subject to? Is it creative financing? Is it seller financing? Is it short-term rentals? Whatever. That is the wrong question to ask. And it opens you up to predatory practices. Like, if I want to rip someone off, I just have to ask, well, what's the question they all want to know? Put together a course that proposes to answer it. Don't tell them any of the reality of how that's going to work, and I'll get their money. So if the question everyone's asked is, how do I get in shape without having to sweat, without having to work hard? Very easy to sell you some exercise equipment. Would you agree, Kyle? Like, it's not hard to do, right? But it doesn't matter if the equipment doesn't work. I got your money. I'm not being held accountable to if the equipment works. Same is true for real estate. So I'm trying to give people the information that works. That's what the new book is going to be about. But it's not always what you want to hear, okay? The Thigh Master, the Ab Roller, the Butt Master 3000, like whatever it is, didn't really create a whole lot of fitness models out of the world. It just collected a lot of dust in attics. That's not the answer. The information that's going to be in this book, the information that we talked about at the retreat, is the answer, even though it's a more difficult sort of process to take. That's why you want other people on the journey with you, because it's going to be hard. What were some of the feedback that you heard, Kyle, that stood out to you?
Yeah, one of the biggest words that I heard from a lot of different people at the retreat was the word paradigm shift. So many people came in with an idea of what real estate investing is supposed to look like, what they think the portfolio architecture that they're supposed to have is supposed to look like. But just about everybody walked away with a shift in what they thought they were supposed to be doing. Now they felt like they knew what they were supposed to be doing. And so it was really cool just to see. It was kind of like, Neo entering in the Matrix. They took the red pill, and now they were like, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And everybody had different varying levels of degrees of how that happened. But I heard the word paradigm shift so many times.
What about like at the end of the retreat, what were some of the things you heard people say that you were surprised by when we did the little debrief at the end?
So when we did the little debrief at the end, I don't know if there was anything I was necessarily surprised by, but one of the things that really got me was the way that people in the group were able to connect with one another. And sort of help each other out, right? So there's obviously the information that was provided by you, and I mean, literally hours of content, probably 30 hours of teaching over that time. And the cool thing was they were able to take that information and help each other create different action plans on it. And so that was one of the things that kind of jumped out at me, was seeing how other people have connected. I think I've talked to 9-10 people in the last week that were at the retreat, already telling me the progress that they made, the trigger that they've pulled. I've already talked to a few people about what they want to do in their markets. So I'm working with some different people. So that part has been really neat to see. And then the other side of that too was just the vast amount of options that people have. Like literally like 95% of the people there by the end had their laptop open. They were looking for deals. They had their spreadsheets open. They were literally trying to put deals together. So I think just everybody had an aha moment and knew exactly what they wanted to do when they walked away.
Good deal. Yeah, we had Kyle there chiming in about negotiating strategies. We had Christian talking a lot about lending programs and some of the ways that when Christian and I are buying houses that we specifically structure the deal to get ourselves better financing, lower interest rates, more money in our pocket instead of putting it into the closing costs. So there's a lot of practical information, I think, that was given. Kyle, do we have a phone number we can put up for people that want to text in? I couldn't find the banner for it.
Yep. So I'll get that going. And the other thing I will add one more thing that people got. I heard this from a lot of people. They said they got more than what they expected, not only in terms of content, but they also got more than what they expected from you practically. A lot of people thought, oh, okay, this is going to be a seminar. David's going to maybe speak for 45 minutes a day. It was the opposite. They got so much David. They obviously got a lot of Kyle. They got a lot of Christian, but a lot of people were really surprised about how much you actually poured into that. And it was literally laden with content from 10 a.m. in the morning till 10 p.m., sometimes 11 p.m. at night. We were getting our meals, our dinner, our lunch, and we were eating through those meals and through those dinners and learning at the same time. So it was really a true meat and potatoes kind of thing, and a really good experience. So yeah, definitely. If you guys want more information, you can definitely go check out davidgreen24.com/retreat, because we're looking to put on some more this next year. So there should be one coming up in Q1 of 2023, and really excited for the next one. And there's going to be definitely more coming down the road.
Good deal.
All right. So let's jump in to tonight's topic. We would love to have you come on live during this session. And what we're going to do actually is we just a reminder, we want your question to be as closely geared or related to tonight's topic. So the different topics that we have for you tonight, we're going to be talking about David's new book, specifically building financial independence, and what the building blocks that go into that. David calls it his pillars of wealth and wealth building. We're going to be talking a little bit about what's going into that book and some of maybe the types of things that David's learning through that, but also, a little bit of like budgeting, what you can do to save more money, create more capital. And then we're going to talk a little bit as well about some the rate hike and how that will impact you in today's market. So if you have a question and you would love to come on live with David, with myself, with Christian, we'd love to have you come on. But let's make sure we keep it to those topics. I'm going to come on and remind you guys a little bit later as well about those topics. If you look at the bottom of the screen right now, you'll see a little ticker going. If you have a question, you're going to want to text message that question to the number below, which is 833-777-0309. David, you want to maybe jump in and talk a little bit about the book as I start to screen and chat with some other people that are coming on?
Let me ask you a couple questions before we go into the specifics of the book. If I told you there was a way to lose weight that did not involve exercise or dietary discipline, and didn't involve methamphetamine, would you believe me?
No,
because like the pattern of the world is that it does not work that way. The only way your body will burn calories is if you're taking in less than what if you're burning up more than what you're taking in. What would open you up to being preyed upon is if I said, hey, I got a shortcut. Almost everything that ignorant people put their money towards is some form of a shortcut in some way. You don't have to actually go through the process of saving up money to buy a house. You could get a negative amortization loan with an interest rate of 1%. And then you don't see that in the back of that is someone saying, oh, but it's going to adjust every year after that, and you're going to lose your house. One of the ways that when I'm trying to figure out what philosophy I want to build my business on, my personal finances on, my belief system as a human on, is, does this principle that I am being told will work here, does it work anywhere else? We should see if this is a system that works, like say delayed gratification. If I'm saying, hey, the way to better being fit is to delay gratification. Put more time in working out now, put more time in eating better now, and later you'll have a better life. That I should see that showing up at other parts of life as well. Does delayed gratification work in relationships? Does it work in friendships? Does it work in business? Does it work in everything else, right? So delayed gratification is a principle that I can bank on. And you'd agree with that, Kyle. You don't see any examples where there actually are shortcuts.
Very rarely. And if they are, it's a synthetic shortcut. It's fake. It's not real.
There you go. So the book that we're talking about writing here, like, we're not sure what it's going to be called. I'm working on the outline now. Pillars of Wealth. It basically focuses on what nobody wants to hear other than the people that are destined to do great. Like people like Christian and people like Kyle that have built up wealth for themselves are already doing the stuff I'm about to talk about. They've been doing it before they met me. And so they don't hear this information and immediately go, oh, I don't like it, right? And that's the irony of it, is the people that enjoy it are already doing it, but the people that need to hear it don't like it. And I'm prefacing this by saying this might not taste good. When you're fed broccoli, but you've been eating Pop-Tarts your whole life, it's normal to spit it out. You don't like that. That doesn't mean it's bad. So the book is basically going to be a simple wealth building formula that anybody can follow. Every single human being listening to this right now can use this to build wealth, right? And it's going to focus on three things. The first is defense, and that's going to be saving money. This is budgeting. This is discipline. This is tracking where your money goes. This is understanding how compound interest works and making sure that your own budget is solid so that later in life, when you start making more money, you don't have lifestyle creep that starts to, like, you got to raise, then you start spending more. The first thing you do is buy a new car. The first thing you do is buy a big primary residence. The first thing that you do is start taking vacations or start buying up the bar because you want everyone to know that you're a big shot. It doesn't matter if you make more money if you're spending it. So the discipline of making sure that you save your money is first. Like, I would say if somebody wants to lose a lot of weight, going to the gym is great, but it's even better to get your diet under control. If you just diet well and you don't work out hardly ever, Kyle's a great example of this. Not to throw you under the bus, I just don't know how much you're working out, Kyle. I know that you're eating very well, right? So Kyle's looking great, and it's not because he's working out all the time. He's fasting, he's eating healthy foods. So that's the first thing that you got to get down if you want to get capital. And capital is what you need to buy freaking real estate, right? You can do it with no and low money down. You can borrow money from other people. You can try to force it to work. It doesn't work as well. And I'll talk about that later, why it doesn't work if you don't have capital. The second component of the book is going to be offense. This is how you make more money at the job you have. The principles, the mindset, the examples to follow, the way that you should perceive opportunity, the way you should approach every day. So I put a post on on Instagram today saying approach every day like it's the last day of tryouts and you don't want to get cut. Remember those days, Kyle?
Yes, they were scary days.
Yeah, they were scary. There was fear, right?
Yeah.
But when did you play your hardest?
When I knew I might get cut.
And in the NBA, when do guys tend to have their worst year? What part of the contract cycle?
Probably after they get the signing.
That's it.
Right after
they get their
big
first
contract.
big guaranteed contract, 5 years. They put in the worst performance ever. And this is where you used to love that player. And now you're screaming at the TV because they're not setting screens. They're not playing defense. They're not engaged. They're not hungry. This is human nature. Okay. So what I've tried to do is I don't look at my wealth and go, oh, I got a lot of it. Okay. Compared to some people, I do. And I don't look at it and say, well, I don't have enough, because then you're greedy. I just don't care. It doesn't matter if I'm making $200 million a year in the NBA or a $200 million contract over 5 years. The point is to win the game. Okay. And if I just want to win as LeBron James, I'm not going to take it easy when the rookie's going to bust his butt. In fact, if I'm getting paid $200 million over 5 years, I should probably be outworking the rookie. That's a mindset. There's a mindset that says I've made it, I can coast. And there's another mindset that says the owner of this team is paying me this much money. The fans are expecting it. I'm taking the lion's share of the salary cap. I better be providing the lion's share of the value. They're paying me more. They deserve more out of me. And when you take that attitude, you are much less likely to lose your money, and you're much more likely to continue to grow, expand, have a better life, have more influence. And so if all of us approached every day of work like I'm going to give the best performance of my career in this game. Okay. Christian did jiu-jitsu for a long time. He knows what it's like when you're like, hey, today you're rolling with that guy. You're like, oh God, I don't want to roll with that guy. That brown belt, that black belt, that like, and you're a blue belt or something, right?
My back's hurting.
You know. Yes. You don't, but if you're going to do it, you're focused. I cannot make any mistakes. If I let him get an inside hook, anything I do, you show up and you do the best jiu-jitsu ever. Now you lose, but it doesn't matter because you get better. This is why you get better rolling with better people or training with better people or learning from better people. In business, you always want to be around better people. So these principles are going to be in the book. How to make more money. Like, guys, listen, nobody wants to hear this. I'm just going to tell you the truth. If you have a job that doesn't make much money, that is your choice. You could take an illiterate person, low confidence, no skills, any life situation that you want to put out there. There is a path that person can improve their situation. Okay. If you took me right now, then you took away everything I had, all of my wealth, all my properties, all my podcasts, everything, and you drop me as a homeless person in the middle of Chicago, I would go find a 7-Eleven and I would beg the owner to let me work for free. You don't have to pay me. We're not going to report this. You don't have to do anything. Let me sweep your floors. Let me stock your shelves. Let me do anything that you want. Like that. Okay, you don't trust me to touch the cash register? I won't touch it. Let me just stand behind the guy who is touching the cash register and help him. Oh, we need to put more hot dogs in the little thing, or the soda thing needs to get changed. Let me go do it. And I would do that for a week. And at the end of that week, I would say, will you pay me $5 an hour after seeing this? And they're going to be like, this is the best employee I've ever had. You get minimum wage. And I would approach every day. Like, I got to outwork everybody in that 7-Eleven. I got to outwork everybody in every 7-Eleven in this city. I will be the best effing 7-Eleven worker that has ever existed. And I would sweep the floors perfectly. I'd mop the floors perfectly. And in the process of doing that, I would start to recognize patterns in sales. I would start to recognize that I can double what we make if I can sell a soda to every customer that wants to get a bag of Skittles. And I could just say, did you know that you can get a soda right now for 79 cents instead of $1.50? I got a cup right here. You want me to ring you up and you can go get it? I didn't know that. Okay. And maybe 30% of the time I sell a soda, which doubles whatever they were going to spend on those Skittles, right? Theoretically, I could double the revenue by looking at how to propose different sales features. I could find ways to more efficiently track the inventory. There's all kinds of things I could do. And the owner of that 7-Eleven that runs a business that's looking for value and is like perpetually frustrated by the poor performance of their employees would absolutely notice that. And they would probably start giving me raises. At a certain point, I would become the manager of this stuff. Now, remember, you dropped me off in Chicago homeless. I'd be managing that 7-Eleven. And not because I'm a genius, just because I'm outworking everybody. And it's not that hard to I don't mean it's not hard to manage a 7-Eleven, like I'm disparaging people that do it. But compared to what human beings can accomplish, this is not a super hard thing to do. And then I would say, let's buy another 7-Eleven, let me manage it. And I'd get a raise. Like, you could work that process as any human being out there. You could drive a truck as a delivery driver and be faster, smarter, and get more sales than the other drivers and get promoted. There's nothing in our country that stops people from doing this. What stops us is us. Most of us have what I call the W-2 mentality, where we show up every day to work, and the goal is, how do I do the least work possible while also making the most money possible? If we're honest with ourselves, this is what the majority of people do. Like, how do I get a raise and more money without working hard? And what we think is we're outsmarting our boss and we're outsmarting the system. That's the way we perceive this. If you showed up every day like I am trying to avoid getting cut and this is the last day of tryouts, you'd have a very different approach. And what you would find is your bosses would be dumping money on you. Kyle, Christian, and I all work in varying ways in sales industries. And when we see a person who is clearly outperforming their peers, they don't have to ask us for a raise. We bring them more leads, more opportunities, more, hey, show up with us and do this thing. Hey, we're going to bring you and we're going to give you a platform. Hey, we're going to give you a raise. Hey, with these ones, we're going to give you a better split. We look for ways to give them something. The problem is we don't find people very often. What most of them are doing is saying, I want to work less and make more. So give me a better split so I don't have to work as hard. It's the opposite. We want the person that's going to work really hard and say, let's give them a better split so that they're motivated to work harder. That will be in the book. Just the mindset of how you should approach every day at work, because making more money matters. More people in our country should be saying, I live in the best country in the entire world if I want to build wealth. We are still a capitalistic country. There is no other country in the world. If you had to get dropped in the middle of a country somewhere and say, find a way to make something of yourself, there's no better place to do it than America. You could just be really good at putting on makeup and be skinny, and you can make 6 figures on TikTok showing other girls how to put on makeup. I just think about that. Like, at what point in history could you be really good at talking and get paid that much money? It's kind of insane if you think about how much money is available in America. The reason we don't see the opportunities is we have this attitude that we are owed this and money's supposed to come to us. It's not fair that it went to Christian. It was supposed to come to me. It's not fair that those people made their money. I was supposed to get it. And if it went to them instead of me, that's an excuse why I shouldn't have to work hard because I'm bitter. It really should be the opposite. LeBron James shouldn't be looking at the rookie and saying, well, that person's outworking me. He should be saying, I'm going to outwork that person. And the rookie should be doing the same thing. Man, if LeBron's working this hard and he's already got his paycheck, I should be working twice as hard because I'm trying to get mine. It's not fair that LeBron has all that money. Okay, well, I better work harder so I can get some of it too. And then the third part of the book will be about investing that money. Strategies to invest it, like kind of basic stuff, not super deep esoteric things that anybody who wants to invest in real estate can do. Buy one house hack and do it every single year. Put 3.5% to 5% down on a house, and in 10 years, you're a multimillionaire doing one deal a year. Just, I'm willing to be uncomfortable by house hacking. That is literally all you got to do, and you will be a multimillionaire. I'm telling you. Now, you want to be a multimillionaire? Do that and burr a house every year. Do that and use long distance investing, right? There's all kinds of strategies where real estate will work. The reason, if you're listening to this and you're not in real estate, I feel very confident in saying you probably don't have capital. If you've made money and you save that money, you'd have something to invest. You would not have the fear of losing the little bit you've got. If you've only got $15,000, $20,000, and all of that's your down payment on that FHA loan, you're just never going to want to pull the trigger. You're talking about 100% of your safety net in life is going into that house. The stakes are so high. Like, imagine that you're on the team and the coach says, if you make one mistake, not only am I taking you out of the game, you're cut from the team. You're not going on the bus. You're not going to hang out with the guys. You lose your entire identity as a professional athlete. You're not going to be on TV. Your girlfriend's not going to like you anymore. None of the people in your hometown are going to respect you. You're going to be a nobody. you're probably going to say, don't put me in the game. There is too much to lose that if I just make a mistake in any way that I'll lose it all. Now imagine that the coach says, look, you've done so much to bring value to the team. You could completely screw it up out there. We know that you're going to bounce back. That's what it's like when you've already saved up your money. You got money in the bank with the coach. Oh, I'm worried about this deal. Well, if I mess it up, I'll learn and I'll do better on the next one. Okay. That approach is why you guys aren't buying real estate if that's the case. And if you are buying real estate, you've had capital. You've already understood what it's like to make money. You've been disciplined in saving money. You understand that it's okay to lose money in real estate at certain points as long as you learn, because you're going to come back better. You know, you go out there on the basketball court, you make a turnover. That happens. But what happens is you start protecting the ball a lot better. You dribbled too high. Someone stole it. That's the best way to make yourself dribble low. Christian's in jiu-jitsu, right? He puts a little too much space between him and that brown belt. And the dude takes his back. The next time he rolls, he's like, yeah, space is bad. I don't want space anymore. I'm hugging this dude super, super hard. It's the mistake that hurts that makes you actually get better. Well, imagine if you only get one shot at jiu-jitsu. And if the guy taps you, you're kicked out of the club. You're not allowed to clash. You're not allowed to train. Give us your gi. Give us your belt. You are no longer allowed to do this anymore. You lose all your friends. You lose all the camaraderie. You lose all the physical fitness element. You're not going to go roll. And that's what I'm getting at. Like, people don't want to tell you this. They want to tell you that their strategy works better, that you should take their course, that you should follow them, that they've got something that will give you a shortcut. It's when martial arts instructors used to say, we have the secret method no one knows, the 5-finger death punch, the eye gouge, the freaking spinning axe kick. There's always something that you're like, if you learn this, it's indefensible. Everyone in the world you'll be able to take out with one shot with a secret technique. Why do you think they said that? Because everyone would go sign up for the damn course. If they were like, all right, come to my class for the first 18 months, you're going to hate everything about it. You're going to get your butt kicked. Your ego is going to be destroyed. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to feel like you're a complete failure. You're going to want to give up on everything. But at the end of 18 months, you're going to feel better than you ever have. Who signs up for that? Human beings don't like it. So I'm going to wrap up by just explaining this book is what I think everyone needs to hear, but nobody wants to hear. And if you guys want to take this journey with me, it's kind of like signing up for jiu-jitsu class, which I realize is a terrible analogy because I just said I haven't gone for 4 months. I relate to you guys. I know what it's like to not have bought a house in 4 months because I've been skipping class because I've been doing other things, right? There's always something else that you guys will skip other than getting serious. But if you're going to take this journey with us, this is the David Greene method. It is discipline, which is saving money. It is facing your fears and building confidence, which is taking risks and making more money. And then it is investing the difference, where you guys typically on the podcast or in the books only hear about step 3. I've already made the money. I've already saved the money. Now, how do I invest it? Well, if you don't have the money, that doesn't really apply to you. Kyle, what are your thoughts after hearing that? And then we'll let Christian weigh in.
Yeah, I'm curious, David, how have you been challenged in this area as you've sat down to kind of write the outline and start writing the book? How have you been challenged to, basically look at your budgeting or look at how you handle and steward your finances differently?
Well, first off, this is the hardest book I've ever written. I've been like, this outline feels like a jiu-jitsu roll that I just can't win. Like, every time I think I got progress, I'm like, this is not good enough. It needs to be better. And it's just been like probably 6 months of working on it, trying to figure out what should be in the book, what shouldn't, what's the way I should. This is a very, very difficult book to write. And in writing it, like, one of the things that I told Kyle is we need to get budget software, and I need to run my credit card statements through this software to see where my money's going. Okay. I know that it's kind of like if you look at offense and defense, like offense is how many points you score and defense is how many points you give up, right? It's not a perfect analogy because if you win the game by 1 point, it's the same as if you won it by 30. But in life, it's different. Winning by 1 point is like leaving with $1,000. Winning by 30 is like leaving with $30,000. Imagine if the way we scored games is you got credit for how much you won by or how much you lost by. So if you're losing by 20, you don't just put your subs in. You're like, we got to get down to where we only lose by 10, because that's how they're keeping score for the playoffs. Is it would completely change the way that we approach sports. You wouldn't just look at every individual game as its own independent thing. They would all become a bigger part of a whole. Well, that's what personal finance is like. You can be making great money and you could then spend a lot of money. But over 10 years, if you just could have saved another $5,000 over 10 years, that equals what, like $600,000
Mhm.
difference. And if you invested $600,000 that you saved over 10 years over the next 20 to 30 years, you're talking about more like 10 to 12 million dollars that you should have made.
Mm.
So just the difference of I didn't save all my money, but I saved enough of it could end up being 10 to 12 million dollars later in life, which is game changing, generational changing. Like you have a completely different life with another $12 million at the end, especially if you were only going to end up with 3 or 4 million. So what's changed is me understanding, like, when I'm preaching financial independence and I'm giving people advice on how to get ahead, where your money goes matters. Those details matter. Are you saving 40% of your income, or are you saving 67% of your income? That is a massive, massive difference when you compound it over time. And it starts with actually budgeting and knowing where the money's going, which no one likes to do. Like, I've gone through periods of time where I used a little app on my phone, and every time I ate anything in the day, I had to type it in. Chocolate chip cookie, and it tells me 400 calories, right? And you're only supposed to have like 2,200 for the day. I remember at those times that when I was thinking about that cookie and I'm like, oh, I gotta put it in there, I didn't eat it because the thought went through my head, it's not worth it. And if I did go over, I would then have to go running until I got my calories up to match how much I went over by. And you're running like 3 miles when you want to be like hanging out with other people. And you're like, I freaking, like, a couple cookies has ruined my whole night. Like, when you're tracking what you're doing, your entire universe changes. The way you experience the life is very different. And the same goes for finances. If you don't know where your money's going and you don't know what you're making, you aren't in control of your future.
Yeah, and I would take it just a slight step further than that. When you're tracking, it creates some kind of connection between the hemispheres of your brain to where you're now invested in that and it's part of your identity. Like, for example, I've been doing a lot of intermittent fasting. So I've been doing 48 hours, 72-hour fasts, and I feel so much better, right? And then I see all the positive benefits and how it's impacting my life. Like, I'm more sharp. I have more energy. I have better focus. I'm slimming down. I don't feel as slow. I don't feel as sluggish, right? So I've got all these like really positive things. And then last night, we're having dinner and we got this great apple cobbler with ice cream. And I only had one bowl and I ate it. It was really, really good. And my wife's like, here's your second bowl. And I'm like, I'm not going to eat it. And she was actually confused because the old Kyle probably would have eaten it, right? But the way that I was feeling was so much better than that short temporary feeling that I would have gotten from just eating a little extra ice cream and a little bit of cobbler. It was more important to me to feel good for the rest of the next day instead of feeling a little bit more sluggish and just getting a little short-term satisfaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like, it changed the way you approached your whole evening.
Yeah, and it's the
Where
same.
it
Yeah,
would have just been second nature. Just, yeah, I'm just going to eat it because it's right here.
it's the same thing with money, right? That delayed gratification, like you're talking about, is it puts the focus on what you're going to feel like tomorrow, what you're going to accomplish tomorrow, what you're going to get done tomorrow by putting off, oh, I'm not going to spend the money on that Starbucks or whatever it is that you're
Yeah.
overspending on. So,
Yeah, the fitness analogy works because there's a clear differentiation between like getting the result and doing the thing. But where it falls apart is you don't get fitness compounding over time. It's not like because Kyle skipped that peach cobbler or that apple cobbler that 10 years down the road he can eat like an entire 3 boxes of pizza without putting on weight. But money does work that way.
mhm.
It's massively powerful over time. Like, that extra couple $1,000 that you were able to save that turned into $15,000, that turned into your first down payment on an FHA loan for a house, that turned into 500,000 of equity that you then refinanced or sold and bought 3 more houses with, and then those all turned into 500,000 of equity, becomes $2 million. Compare that to the initial like couple thousand that you had to save at a time.
Mm.
It's wild how much it grows. So when it comes to money, this discipline is even more important than food, fitness, all the other areas that we see delayed gratification. Christian, I know you've been sitting there patiently this whole time. What are you thinking?
No, this is good. I think it's funny when you were talking about, getting getting dropped off in Chicago without any direction, right? I was thinking, I mean, all of us probably have a first job story, but my first job was at Subway, right? I got a job at Subway when I was like 15 and a half or 16 years old. And I feel like maybe I've always had that determination kind of gene, so to speak. But I remember sitting there and when we would hit the rush hour, right? We hit like 12:30, 1 o'clock. Everybody's off from work. Everybody's on their lunch break. We were in a pretty busy, strip mall. Location. And we had a Chase next door. We had like a little coffee shop next. We have Starbucks next door. So a lot of those workers would come in and get their lunch. And I remember it would bother me so much when like there'd be 12 people in line. I'm like, no, we can't have 11 people waiting, right? And I would go into like superstar sandwich mode, right? And I'd be like assembly lining down these. And if you really like know what they're supposed to be doing, they're supposed to change their gloves in between every sandwich, right? And they're supposed to like, you're supposed to follow this whole process. I remember so many of the workers would be sitting there, taking their time, getting the turkey out, getting the cheese out. And I feel like there was just this drive in me. And it's the same thing that you were saying, David. I'm hesitant to say the same thing, that, people not maybe moving up in their industry or whatever, it's their fault. Because I obviously there's circumstances that are always outside of people's control. But I do think your work ethic that you bring into an environment where especially when your superiors are directly observing you, right? Where, I mean, at that Subway, the owner worked with us, right? They were on the line and they were watching us all day, right? And she asked me to be the manager on the weekends, right? And I only worked there for 3 months. It was a summer job, right? She was trying to get me to stay there to working after my college hours, right? So I resonate with that. And I think this can be very easy to just, designate to real estate. It's the same thing for those of you who are on the retreat with us. It's easy to just apply all these things to real estate and investing. But when you really back up and you realize, oh man, I could have better, discipline in my personal life, or maybe your relationships, or maybe your W-2 job, whatever you're doing. I think you'd be surprised to see how much benefit comes down the pipeline when you're putting a lot of that out into the world, especially when you're being directly observed with, by either your supervisors or your higher ups. Just like David said, we look at people in our company and we look for opportunities to give them based on what they put into the company, right? I mean, it's same thing with Kyle does, right? With his real estate team, right? Like Kyle's promoted a number of people on his team because they've done a really good job, right? They've helped them out a lot. They've really put a lot of good stuff back into the company. And I think if you approach every aspect of your life with that, you're going to find yourself in better situations as time goes on.
One of the things that I notice is language is often used for more than it's intended. So when we're using words, we should be trying to communicate thoughts, points, reason, perspectives. And so, like, let's say, for instance, you say, I'm trying as hard as I can. How many times have we made that statement when our intention was not to communicate that literally I can't try any harder, but what we really meant was, leave me alone. I'm not going to try any harder than this. Okay. When someone says I'm trying as hard as I can, what they usually mean is lower your expectations of what you want from me, because I'm not going to try harder. But if you had to hear yourself say what I just said, it sounds like a B word move. Like, that's not cool to admit you're that weak. So nobody wants to do it. What they instead is they say is, I'm trying as hard as I can. And what I would say is that's probably a lie. Because I don't think any of us here, me included, actually know how hard I can try. I don't know that I've ever hit a day where I gave it my very best. I don't know I ever played a game of basketball where I played my very best game. There was something I could have done. I could have just ran harder on a fast break to make a defender pay attention to me that would have taken a little bit of attention off of the one with the ball that might have made just enough difference for him to get the half step that he needed to get to the rim. And that could have been 2 points, which might have been that game if we had lost by 1. Like, there is no way to be perfect. So when you say things like, I'm trying as hard as I can, another one I noticed, it doesn't matter what I do, no one's going to notice anyway. It's just the stupidest thing for someone to say. When have you ever been somewhere in life and needed something and been looking around for help and just thought, well, it wouldn't matter if anyone came to save me right now. It doesn't matter what they do. I'm not going to pay attention to them anyways. None of us live our life like that, where what we all want is excellence out of others. Okay. You walk in a Subway, you see the line. Dang it, the line's long, but I really want that turkey and roast beef club, right? What's the question we all ask? How fast is the sandwich maker working? When you see that line of 11 people and you're hungry and you don't want to be there and they're being a slug oh, this sucks. I have to work hard. There's 11 people waiting. Why don't they hire more people so I don't have to do as much? You start thinking the thought I want to leave, or you start thinking negative thoughts about that person. Admit it. Every single one of us does this. You're at the restaurant. The server has a bad attitude. They don't pay attention to you. You're wanting more water, wanting more sauce, wanting something, and they're goofing around with their friends in the back, and you can see it. You think negative thoughts about that person. You're definitely not thinking it doesn't matter what they do because I'm going to think what I think anyway. You're thinking I don't like them because of what they are doing. That makes me not like them. But what do you think the waiter's thinking? Doesn't matter what I do. No one's going to notice it. My boss isn't going to give me a raise, so why should I care? Why do I have to work so hard? Like that attitude, there's something so weird that's just prevalent in our minds that we should not have to try hard and that spending energy is bad and that trying hard is the negative thing. But yet we're hypocritical because when we end up in the situation, we want other people doing that for us. We want our realtor to answer the phone when we call. We want the loan officer to explain what's going on. We want people to follow up with us. All the time, I catch agents that I'm working with and they're not being aggressive enough, right? I don't like it when I have to say, hey, I know they agreed to that price, but rates have gone up. Can you get a better price for me? Oh, do you want me to try? I would assume that, yes, you should assume that I want you to try harder, right? And like that just happened today. And he came back and he got me another $25,000 off. That just wouldn't have happened if I would have just said, okay, I'll sign the contract. $25,000 just because I asked a question. Now, of course, he's a better than average agent, so I'm not upset about this situation whatsoever. But the point that I'm trying to get at here is I expect excellence from him. Does he expect excellence from himself? Does he know what excellence looks like in that situation? Does he believe that if he pursued excellence, it would actually benefit him? Because now that we've seen, okay, he went and got me another $25,000. Do you think I'm more likely to tell other people about him as a realtor? What if I get him 2 referrals just from telling people this guy's great, you got to use him? What if he does the same thing for those 2 referrals that he did for me and they give him 2 referrals? Do you guys realize how exponentially fast his business would grow? If every client he had, he blew them away to where they felt compelled to tell other people about how good he was. You just look at like the doubling factor. That person offensively would be making more money than they could possibly keep up with if they kept doing it. It's just an example of why the words that we say matter and we don't even think about it. We just say, I'm trying my hardest. Why do they care? No, you're not. You're not trying your hardest. You're probably not even trying 10% of what you're capable of. And if you don't believe me, go look up David Goggins. That guy makes me feel like a lazy bum every single time I hear him. I'm not trying my hardest. I'm doing nothing close to David Goggins. All right.
Well, and part of it, what I hear you saying, David, is of course you have to work extremely hard. Of course our words matter and what we're saying, but I think I also hear you saying we need to put ourselves in the shoes of that other person, right? When Christian was working the assembly line at the sandwich shop, he would see 12 people come in and he would put himself in their shoes and say, you know what, if I was standing there, I wouldn't want to be waiting that long. So I'm going to work my ass off to try to get these sandwiches made as best as I can so that they don't have to deal with it.
Now, I don't want to speak for Christian too much, but I think he'd be okay with me telling you guys he did not come from a privileged background. Okay. Came from a very difficult background where probably nobody would have looked at the place Christian came from and expect anybody to do anything very positive from that background. And lo and behold, because he took the attitude of, I'm thinking about other people's situation. I want to be of more service to them. And I'm going to push myself to work as hard as I can. Like, what do you know? The universe rewarded him. And now he's a millionaire. Like, that is not a coincidence. Okay. It's not, you take the guy in the basketball court. Kyle used to coach basketball. We both played. I coached it a little bit. You'd have the player and you're like, that kid works so hard. He's going to be good, right? You knew it. Like, there's zero chance that someone that works that hard can't get better. It's how the world works. Like, if you just said, I'm going to go to the gym today and lift weights until I cannot lift it again, what are the odds that you're not going to get stronger and more fit with that approach? Is it even possible to stay the same? What do you guys think, Christian, Kyle?
0%. The odds are you're going to succeed.
0%. If you just went to the gym and said, I'm going to work out as hard as I can, lift as heavy as I can, as many times as I can until I cannot do it again, 0% chance you're not getting better, right? It's actually remarkably simple to build wealth. The problem is we're not asking the question of what do I need to do to go lift weights harder? What accountability partner do I need? What what skills do I need to build to learn the form right? What discipline do I need to get in there? What gym do I need to join? What person do I need to emulate? There's a mentor in the gym. I've had mentors in gyms that had no idea who I was. Just me watching them every time is how I learned to do the thing. We don't ask that question. What question do we ask? How do I get buff without having to try hard? How do I get in shape using the Buttmaster 3000 so I can be smiling in my living room watching TV, not sweating, right? Do you guys know anyone that does CrossFit?
Yeah.
They're insane. Like they're insane people that do that. Okay. Does anyone know anyone that consistently does CrossFit that is super fat? I haven't seen one. I don't know that that's exactly right. Christian's point. You can't be that way if you go work every hard. If you went to work every day, no matter if it's at Subway or 7-Eleven or Neiman Marcus or Morgan Stanley, it doesn't matter where it is on the spectrum. If you go work that hard every day, it's impossible to not get noticed. You will at minimum get promoted to the upper echelon of what that company does. And then you have the option to say, you know what, I want to go work for a better company. And you have that same ladder to climb. And I don't know why more people don't talk about this, to be frank. It seems like the best advice anyone could ever get. It's just nobody wants to hear it. It's impossible to not succeed if you're following what we're talking about here. All right. I have made that point. Now I want to hear what Yeshua has to say. Can we bring in Yeshua, Kyle?
Sure. Yeah. Let me actually really quick. We're going to get to Jeshua next. Let's get to Paula first because she's a little bit more specific to this topic. She wants to make a point. And then we'll go to Jeshua. But Paula is actually a real estate agent in Florida, and she said she sees this play out all the time, especially with newer agents that want to get their license and want to leave their 9-to-5, but don't necessarily want to put in the time and the work. So I'm curious, Paula, what's your observation on all this?
I was just listening. Well, thank you for the opportunity. First of all, love your work. But yeah, it's so many people each year get their license hoping to leave their 9-to-5. But then, we don't have anyone on our backs pushing us to do things, to make our phone calls, to be out there getting prospects, leads. So when they see that we have to work 50, 60 plus hours a week, or, we have to be emailing people at midnight sometimes, trying to get things, or trying to make things happen. Then they start quitting. So if you see the number of people that try to get their license versus the number of people that keep it, you realize, okay, how many of these agents are really in search of excellence? And it's the same thing with investors. Everybody, all of us dream to have, to make those $1 million out of investments, but are you willing to put the hours? Are you really in search of excellence? Because it's hard work. You're not going to work your 9-to-5. You're probably going to work more.
Paula, I want to get your thoughts on this. Why I think more people don't do well investing is it is sold to them as the alternative to hard work. Okay. So we have this language, passive income and active income. And this is why I'm saying words matter. The way it's framed, active income is hard work. You got to wake up before you want to. You got to go to work. Yeah. You got to listen to a boss who's a jerk. You got to sit in a commute. Active equals bad. Now, if you take my course, if you buy my book, if you listen to me, whatever, you can get passive income.
Magic, right?
No boss, no commute. No. It's magic. You just make 1 or 2 smart decisions, and for the rest of your life, you don't have to work anymore. Everyone comes in with that expectation that it shouldn't be hard, that it's the alternative hard. But like you said, no, it is harder than active income because it's better.
Right.
It has more upside. It has more value to give you. We're all competing for these assets now because they're people have figured this out. It's better than active income. So everyone, which means you got to come to the fight that much harder. Like, do you disagree with anything there? Do you see it differently?
No, I agree 100%. You just got to put in the work. There's no shortcuts. And eventually, yes, you build up to a point where you can actually, it becomes a passive income. But once you are on that rhythm, you can't let go. You want to keep going. You want to build more. So I think it never leaves you. You end up loving it. And I don't know how much of a passive income is, once you are in it and you just want to keep doing it.
Yeah, and like everything, it becomes easier as you do it more, right? The hardest workout you ever do is the first one.
Mhm.
Right.
After that,
Prepare-
they become progressively easier. You don't get
Right.
sore as much. Your body adjusts to it. You
Mhm.
like I can lift more weight now than when I started, and it's not as hard as when I started, unless I get out of it and I have to start back up again. Right.
Mhm.
So like that's another principle to remember is when you first start like Christian at Subway working as hard as you can, it is very hard to maintain focus, to not cut yourself with the knife, to keep your energy levels high, to not let your mind drift, to not make mistakes when you're trying to punch it in on the register as fast as you can. I mean, I used to practice putting the gloves on and off because this is funny. One of my first jobs was Togo's, the Togo Subway rivalry, right? Like I would practice where to grip the glove and how to put it on my hand because I figured if I can save 2 seconds putting on gloves, but I was going to have to do it 50 times a night. That's a lot of time, especially when we're in the rush,
Mhm.
right? Like, and it feels difficult, but after it becomes second nature. I was putting on gloves without even thinking about it because I practiced it so many times. And then I could start the conversation with the person, what size sandwich and what kind of bread. That was always the first thing I needed to know because until I cut the bread open, I don't have the other questions. Those patterns start to emerge. So hard work doesn't suck forever. It does kind of suck at first, but it doesn't suck nearly as bad as being broke.
Mhm. People
Right.
work 40 years for someone else, for an employer, making them money, and they can invest, 10 hours a day working on, for something for themselves. It's crazy, but it's true.
You know what they get out of it because they work for an employer, in my opinion?
Mm.
They're not trading their time for money with their employer. They are trading their time for comfort.
That's true. It's not easy to get out of the comfort zone. And that's true.
No, when you own your Subway, if no customers come in, who loses money?
Right.
You do. What if
Not
you
the
work for someone
employee.
else's Subway? Right. When you work at someone else's Subway and no customers come in, you won. I didn't have to work today until you lose your job and then you lose, right? But
Right.
like our country has so many safety nets in place to support people that lose their jobs that we've taken away the incentive to give a crap. If your team loses, you should lose too, right?
Right.
That's one of the reasons I think people don't leave their job and no one wants to tell them this and they don't want to hear it. You're at that job because it's easy and comfortable and no risk and you want all the perks that come from it and you just want to be bitter about the fact that you have a ceiling on you. Well, you have a ceiling because you have a floor. And if you want no
Right.
ceiling, you're also going to give up that floor, which is the better road because people get more out of themselves when they push themselves like that. What country are you from, Paul? I'm assuming it's not America.
No, I'm originally from Chile.
Chile. Okay. Would you say that you and most of the family members that you have that moved here work harder than a Native American? Not a Native American, a native living American person.
Right. Well, at the beginning, yeah, we're crazy. We work whatever in any position we have to. We just come with that mindset to.
Mhm. Because you could not do that in Chile. Is that fair?
I don't know if we couldn't, but
You didn't have the same opportunity. I'm saying the upside wasn't as high.
yes, absolutely.
You almost
Yes.
had to work hard there to get a job. You come here and
Right.
that same level of work gets you a much higher return.
But I know the difference probably is that I know that the harder I work here, the more chances I have. I can go places. There you can work as hard as you can, and you can only reach a certain level. So, I want to work hard here.
Awesome. Kyle, Christian, anything you guys want to add there before we let Paula go?
No, I think it's not surprising that Paula Caesar. So I see you're labeled Orlando Investment Homes. I don't think it's surprising that somebody from a background, just like you explained with people natively from Chile, and I know a couple people that I could say the same thing. When you come from a background, I came from that where, David kind of shared a little bit, but I wasn't privileged. I had to work hard. I had to, it's funny that usually those are the ones overcoming the challenges and succeeding the most, where you learn to want a little bit, right? And that's what David's saying with the W-2 mindset is not that W-2 is bad, but it's kind of anti-drive in a lot of situations, right?
Yes, I agree.
And just like David said, hey, we'll take real care of your floor, but we're going to take all the ceiling, right?
Right.
Which is it's different mindset for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a great book written by Brian Buffini. He's an Irish immigrant into America and probably one of the most well-known real estate agents and real estate coaches out there. And he wrote the book called The Immigrant Edge, and talking about how him coming to America from nothing, with nothing, and then the challenges that he went through, even when he was here, to then build out to where he was. He felt like that almost gave him that edge. So that's really cool, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Pues gracias, Paula. Gracias para escuchar.
De nada,
para
David.
Este comentario también.
Muy buen trabajo.
Gracias.
Cool. Awesome. This is a really good conversation. By the way, so for those of you that are maybe just jumping in, just joining us, what we're talking about is really David's new book, which is The Pillars for Building Wealth. This is a book that's going to be coming out down the road. He's actually in the middle of writing it right now. And a lot of the topics we're talking about right now is just the amount of insanely hard work that has to go into building momentum in anything that you do, whether that be fitness related, whether that be financial or wealth or real estate or being an agent or being a loan officer, whatever it is, right? If you're an entrepreneur, there's this amount of work and consistency that needs to go into building that. So if you want to jump in on this conversation, we'd love to have you. Look down below, type your question or text your question rather to the number below, 833-777-0309. With that, I'd love to bring in our next guest here. His name's Jeshua. He's a cool guy. I've actually been texting him back and forth here for about the last 15 minutes. But let me tell you a little bit about Jeshua. So he's actually from California. He's got a business analytics degree. He actually has a small lawn care company, but he's a little bit worried about the recession that might push him under. He's already getting some clients that are leaving him to try to save some money. And so he has huge hopes to own and invest, maybe even in California, but not sure where really to push forward with the lawn job versus like the lawn care company, right? The entrepreneur stuff versus going to a W-2 and trying to find stability. So Jeshua, you want to come in and maybe share a little bit and add anything that I might have missed there?
Yeah, I think you said everything. Just want to thank you guys, David, Kyle, Christians. I was saying that Christian looks like you're stockpiling a pile of MREs in the background, but
I do. These are actually, that's funny. About 3 different people have texted me about this. That's not what it looks like, guys. Those are actually pens branded with our logo for BPCon. So I know that looks a little weird.
Christian doesn't leave his seat ever. He just pees into a bottle and he eats MREs when he has to go. He works.
This room's a mess. This is my utility room, so it's just kind of anything that we don't have space for goes here. But these are all. If you guys come to BPCon, you'll see these boxes here as well. Those are a bunch of One Brokerage pens.
Yeah, well, no judgment there, man. But so I did start this lawn care. I took over from my dad about a year ago, and since then have grown it. Brought the tech side to it, trying to get an edge on the market here with the tech side of things. But do see a few clients leaving. Do see some of them saying, "Hey, you know what? I have to start pulling back on my expenses." Even some of them are saying, "Hey, you know what? I gotta sell my house," and so or sell my mother's house that just passed away or something like that. And so I do have my business analytics degree and have been applying at jobs just in case this entrepreneurship does fail, and was wondering what you guys' thoughts are on this, because I know with how things are looking, stability might seem more comfortable. Like
I'll go
David
first.
was saying.
Oh, go ahead. I was saying what? You said, and like David was saying?
Oh, like you were saying, people choose comfort, and I think that's what I end up hearing is that if the business does go under, end up regretting starting the business and hoping that I would have a W-2 instead.
Well, the first thing I'd say is if worst case scenario happens, the business can't sustain itself, you got to go to a W-2. That doesn't mean you failed. You just learned, and then you're not going to stay in that W-2 forever. You stay in the comfort zone forever, yeah, you failed. It's not like a lot of us think we should take one shot, and if we don't succeed, we should quit. But Kyle, how many times have you and I alone failed with hiring people and trying to run a team?
Dozens.
More than we can count. Like there's so many iterations of I tried to learn how to do it through leverage and not myself, and I failed. A lot of people just aren't aware that's normal to fail dozens of times before you get that right. So they go out there, they try it once, maybe twice. Oh, must not be for me. I'm not good at this, right? I know the reason I don't go to jujitsu enough is because I didn't do it long enough to make it a habit, right? It's why I can quit for 4 months, because if I had gone for every single day for like a year, there's no way I was going to get out of it, right? I didn't fail at it. I'm just going to have to start over. I'm going to start going again. I'm going to have to eat some humble pie. I'm going to be out of shape. And if I stick with it, it'll become more of a habit, and then it will become harder and harder to not go. This is how life works. So if you have to go back to your W-2, who cares? You just get back in. Again, the other thing I would say is, because your business is, you're starting to lose business, this is an opportunity to get better at marketing. You probably picked up a couple clients, you got some referrals. Next thing you know, you're cutting grass all the time. Or remind me again what kind of landscaping company it is.
Yeah, lawn and tree care.
Okay,
And
so
maintenance,
lawn and tree care.
and
So what happens is you got comfortable doing the work. And now you're like, hey, I got a good business going on. I want to make sure the work is done well. You weren't thinking about hiring other people to cut more trees or take care of the lawn so you could go market better. But as a business owner, you always want to be replacing the thing that someone else could do, and work is focusing on marketing and lead generation. That's where the money comes from. So now that you've been like kind of kicked off the mountaintop, or maybe you're on the way tumbling down, you're not at the ground yet. It could be an eye-opening thing for you. Like, all right, the next time I do this, as soon as I get a good book of business going on, I'm going to hire a couple other people to actually cut the grass and trim the trees. And I'm going to spend my time marketing, knocking on the doors in the neighborhood, picking up new clients, creating a flyer that I can hand out, offering to do the first one for free. And if they like the work, they can get us in there, giving them a discount because you're already there in the neighborhood. Like, I've thought about that. When I see my neighbor's grass get cut, I'm like, if this dude would come knock on my door and say, I cut his grass for like, it's very small strips of grass where I live, like $30, I'll do yours for 20. I'd be like, a deal. I'll even pay you for 6 months right now, so I don't ever have to see you again, because I'll forget, right? Like, boom, you'd have business right off the bat. You won't think of that when you're the one pushing the lawnmower, making sure it has gas, making sure it starts up. You're thinking about that stuff. You should outsource that. There's plenty of people that are willing to do that. You go take the risk. So you're going to come back for your second iteration stronger than this first one was, and it'll be a blessing that you may have not been able to make it work. The last piece I'll say before I turn it over to these cats is that we don't know how bad this recession is going to be. People often overreact. Like, that's very common. Like, when interest rates go up, that we don't always see the mortgage rates go up because they've already priced it into where mortgage rates are. Everyone's always trying to be smarter than everything. Like, oh, there's a Donald Trump canceled his trip to Russia. Oh, that must be because we're going to war. And all the stock guys try to sell all the stocks that they think are going to get hurt if there's a war, assuming that something bad's going to happen. It's like super quick. And then, oh, we didn't go to war. The stock price comes back up. This is very, very common in America. So I've learned not to react to that dumb stuff. It doesn't matter what everybody else is talking about happening, right? So I wouldn't be super worried. You've had a couple clients that kicked you out, put their information in a CRM, stay in touch with them, let them know, hey, maybe you want to hire me once every 2 months instead of twice a month or something. Keep that relationship open, and then send somebody else, or say, hey, I'll give you guys a discount for the first 3 months. I'll do it at half price or something. And you send somebody else to cut the grass, right? There's lots of things that you can be doing in this situation where I don't think you should overreact.
Got it.
Joshua, I'm curious, what's your response to that?
With marketing, definitely feel that that's something I do lack on. I do rely on Yelp, a lot of Yelp, and then also a lot of word of mouth. But definitely, if I end up going to that W-2 and coming back even stronger, maybe in a stronger position capital-wise, to put that money into hiring that guy, hiring the help, putting that money into marketing, I think that would definitely help out, because that's one thing that definitely I get told a lot. And takes money to make money, and sometimes in the marketing side,
I don't know,
does.
man. I don't know that it takes money. I think it takes time. Like, I just gave you examples of print a flyer, go knock on doors, say, hey, you see your neighbor's house right there? Here's a picture of my phone. We just did that. Here's a thing we do that other people don't do. We cut it at a different angle. We do edging differently. I don't know. Like, we also did their plants to match the thing. I could do the same thing for you for X price. Oh, let me think about it. No problem at all. What's a good number I'll text you at, and I'll ask you what you think about the thing. I'm going to be here next Friday. I'd love to come by and cut your grass too. That takes zero money, man. You don't have to go get SEO to get somebody in a neighborhood to agree to let you cut your grass. And then you start doing it in nicer neighborhoods. They're going to pay you more than the people in the not nice neighborhoods, right? So when you get an entire neighborhood using you, and then all the other neighbors don't want to be the only person not doing it, like, I don't know that you have to spend a lot of money to get started.
Yeah, and definitely do agree on that, because I do, when we do have open days, or when I do have open days, I am out there with door hangers and knocking on doors, and
hiring some people to give you more open days would be a way better use of your time than actually pushing the lawnmower.
Absolutely.
Or cutting the tree.
Joshua, what's just out of curiosity, what's probably the biggest thing holding you back from doing that right now?
Doing what?
From taking yourself out of pushing the mowers and going out there and knocking on more doors.
Yeah, capital. And so still too small, I feel, to hire it out. And at the same time, I don't want to over leverage myself or go out and get that small the SBA loan just to bring in somebody else when I'm still not bringing enough, or bringing just enough for myself, right? And so I guess just the work, having enough work for another person. I take pride in bringing people on, and so I'll bring people on for a few weeks, or if it's like a daytime laborer, I want them to feel like I'm going to take care of them. At the same time, that I want them to put in the effort to do that good job. And so if I bring somebody on without this ability for them to stay on for a longer while than just a couple of weeks, then I'd rather not do that to somebody. So.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
what kind of pressure would that put on you to go get more business if you felt that person's livelihood was in your hands?
That's a good point.
Do you think that might get you performing better if you lost the floor?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you could probably find someone that isn't like, I quit my job to come do this. There might be someone unemployed. There might be someone that only has part-time work with someone else. And so like they get 25 hours over there. They get 25 hours with you. They're working 50 hours, but maybe they're hungry. They want to make more money. And so it's actually not as big of a risk as you think. I promise you, man, there are a lot of options available to you that you will think of on your own if you ask different questions.
Got it. Oh, that's a good point.
Appreciate you sharing this. So I think a lot of people listening are going, oh yeah, I could do that. Like you're helping a lot of people right now.
Well, I think that's the natural pain point for any business to be able to scale, right? I mean, David, Christian, and I have this conversation all the time, right? How long should somebody stay in production versus scale themselves out of production, take themselves off the assembly line to then go find more business, right? And so there's definitely a balance there. And I think for you, Joshua, you're right on that cusp where it's sounding like you probably need to take yourself out of production a little bit more, put a little bit more trust in yourself, your ability to generate more business, put a little bit of pressure on yourself to generate some more business, get out there, start putting your name, spreading your name all over town. And there's no reason why people shouldn't sign up with you, especially because you seem like a really cool guy and you probably offer competitive rates. So there's no reason why you guys can't pick up business. There's plenty of business to be had, especially where you live.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And with my company, Bay Area Green Care, hope you guys are okay that I'm putting that plug in there.
No. Do you spell green with an E at the end? Because that would be better.
I'm not sure if I'm that cool, but what's it called? We do offer fully electric. So I am trying to target the audience here, the market here in this side of the Bay Area where it's very eco-friendly focused. And so, no, I think you're right. I think just going out there and putting more effort and finding somebody to help with some of that work.
Are you afraid of failure?
At this point, yes. I think I would have to be honest that failing is something that sounds scary, only because I'm also planning for a wedding coming up in June, and so a lot of outward pressure to make sure we get that locked in and provided for. And so, yeah, I would say it's something that's on my fear list.
So a couple things I would remind you about is, number one, failure is always temporary. It's never a permanent thing. So if you fail, it doesn't mean you failed for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you failed for eternity. It's just a temporary thing. It's a temporary setback. It's a temporary learning opportunity. But number two, failure is also a necessary ingredient for success. So if you take failure out of the equation to reach for success, you're probably not going to get there. You're just going to probably stick with the same amount of houses that you're working with, right? And so part of what you need to encounter is probably a little bit more adversity. Push yourself out there, push yourself outside of your comfort zone, get rejected a bunch of times, fail a lot, learn from it, continue to grow. And then you'll find at some point you'll hit that momentum.
Absolutely.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Vince.
I'm thinking we should maybe chat a little bit more about the Fed. We're getting some questions about that, types of deals that are coming out, and potential for interest rates going up again. Are you going to be able to find deals out there? Curious what you guys are thinking about that.
Christian, you want to start?
Yeah. Obviously, the market's been probably some of the highest volatility these last 2 weeks that we've seen. It's been volatile on average the entire year, but it's been big. We've had some big rate hikes. Now, just like David said earlier, I want to add some clarity. The rate hike that we experienced this week is not necessarily because CPI came in where it was, or the Fed raising the Fed rate by 75 bips, as most of you probably heard. It was more due to his speculation of what's coming in the future. Just as David said, the day that our 75 bip increase went out, rates actually came down because there was pricing in there for a 100 bip increase, right? So what happens when the Fed comes out and says, oh, and here's our 3-month projection, here's our 6-month projection, here's how we see trending, that's what impacts pricing. The market is filled with very smart people that try to get as much ahead of things as they can. So when you guys are ever listening, don't really worry about what the Fed currently does, what their active action is right now. Think about what they're saying for the future. That will have an impact on what rates do, because rates change based on news, not action, is the best way that I can put it there. So I see a couple people in the channel kind of talking about rates, 6.9%, about to be 8%. All these things are true. Primary residences are getting up close to 7%, which all the more makes it important to run your numbers correctly, right? If you guys are investing in a rental, make sure you're utilizing all of the tax exceptions, all of the benefits that it brings, right? Make sure that you're investing in an area that you see appreciating, right? David made a huge point of this on the retreat. Target an area that, do you like the type of demographic that's moving to the area? Is there a big calling for high earners? Right, you don't want to be investing in somewhere where a lot of people are maybe leaving, or a lot of the good earners are vacating, right, and going somewhere else, right? David usually uses his analogy, where are Californians and New Yorkans moving to, right? That's usually a good place to follow, right? And in the last few years, it's been like Austin, Texas, right? It's been like Boise, right? And those places have cooled a little bit, but those are usually a really good sign to follow people to where there's appreciating markets. But yeah, that's just kind of bringing some light to what's actually going on in the market and what people should be listening to, not necessarily just reacting to the Fed increasing a rate,
right? Okay, what questions you guys have? Because there's so much we could talk about it, but I don't want us to talk about things you're not interested in. I know one of the things we discussed at the retreat is sort of the word to use, pattern, cycle of how the housing market does not react directly to rate changes or any other kind of change. There's always a lag.
Yeah.
So we could talk about that if you guys were curious. Like one thing we notice is buyers will, if anybody wants to talk about that, let Kyle know. Let's bring someone in and we can have a discussion there. Buyers hear about a rate hike and they go on Zillow and expect to see prices dropped by $80,000. It's a very normal thing, but sellers don't look at it that way. So there's always, like, if you understand these patterns, you'll know when to make more aggressive offers, when to put more time into looking at houses versus when it's not a good idea. It'd be cool if we could bring someone in to talk about that.
Yeah, we've also had a few questions. I don't think they've been able to jump on live with us here, but had a few text message questions about, and I'm curious what you think, Christian. People are wondering, with the potential for interest rates continuing to go up, is it going to be harder to access money?
I mean, just to not sugarcoat it, absolutely. That's the purpose behind it, right? I mean, that's the Fed. The difficult position that the Fed find themselves in is that they can impact one of two things, or they measure one of two things, right? They're mainly in charge of balancing two things, and that's number one, inflation, and number two, the employment rate. That's really the only thing the Fed's supposed to balance, right? when the employment rate is really good, like it is now, I think Jerome Powell said that on average, there's 2 times the job openings as there is the unemployment rate right now. Typically, that's a sign of a very healthy economy, right? There's more jobs than there are people. There's a large demand for workers. There's a large demand for salaried employees, right? That usually means businesses are doing well. There's a lot of cash reserves. There's a lot of net income coming in. Now, those of you that are putting 2 to 2 together, that's the way it is because of all the money that just flooded the industry in the last 3 years. COVID stimuli, PPP checks, EIDL checks, all these things that really stuffed the caches of all of these businesses. They have money to pay employees now, right? So even though the inflation gets high and the David was talking about the lagging impact, the jobs market can tend to be that way as well, right? Especially when there's the amount of cash reserves in the industry like there is right now. And I think that's something that has kind of shocked the Fed. If you guys were kind of watching Jerome Powell's kind of facial expressions when he was saying, we were kind of expecting there to be a bigger hit on the jobs market already, but there's still 2 times the job listings than there are active unemployed people. He was almost like taken back by that. Like, man, we can keep going on rate hikes because it's not really impacting the job market yet, right? And he kind of pitched it into good news. Obviously, that means there's more wiggle room for the rates because he can keep hammering inflation on the demand side because jobs aren't really going anywhere, right? So I think until we see that pivot, I think that the jobs data is going to be a really good thing to target, maybe trying to find a bottoming of the rate hikes. Really, I mean, only because the Fed monitors those 2 things, right? And the moment unemployment starts to shift, I think that will be the breaking point of where he starts to pull back a little bit.
We have anybody, Kyle, that wants to come in?
We have a couple people trying to get connected. They got some issues with their cameras.
Christian, what do you think based on what you've heard the Fed and the current political leadership administration saying we should expect to see rates doing in the future?
I think at least for the next 3 to 4 month projection, they're going to continue to hammer it until they get inflation to where they want it to be, or until they start seeing a direct impact in the housing market. I'm sorry, in the employment market. And the housing market will come as a result of that. I do see a couple people talking in the thread here. Are there areas still appreciating, right? This is a really good way to think about this, right? We just had 2 straight years of 25% plus appreciation in certain markets. 2 years where a property plus 50% in value. If we have a 10% decrease, we still have a 2-year average of 20%, right? That's still 40% over 2 years, right? That's still record appreciation. I want to draw attention to that fact. So if you can go right now in a competitive market where buyers have the advantage again, and you can buy a house for 10% below asking or 10% below appraised value. And we talked on the retreat how to, I know not everybody in this was on the retreat, but those who were, we talked about principles to practice on how to target specific properties, on how to look for certain opportunities, right? We went super in detail that people are doing this right now, right? If you're able to build in a 10, 15% reduction based on the appraised value, you're already you're getting ahead, right? You're premeditating a potential drop and you're buying at value considering the drop, right? And you're still, that industry or that market is still 20% year over year appreciation, even accounting for a 10% drop. I think that's what people need to be focusing on. And the last 2 years, you almost had to go the other way, right? You had to buy for what the house is going to be worth in 6 months. I remember David and Kyle, we used to talk in the Bay Area, like, what's this house going to be worth in 6 months? That's what we have to pay because that's what everybody's targeting, right? And the house that appraised for 1.5 million had to be bought for 1.7, right? Now we're going the other way. Let's buy for what it may be worth in 6 months. It may, okay, if this market drops by 10%, this $1 million house may be worth 900. Why don't we go try to get it to 900, right? And we have the ability to do that right now with all the seller concessions and ways we're able to write competitive offers. Go for it, David.
So we can give some specific examples if we can get a person who wants to come in and kind of talk to us about this with how we're paying less. But I also want to note, I bought houses when the market was red hot. I don't want to buy right now. It's a frenzy. It's a bidding war. The market's too hot. It's going to crash. I bought houses, like Christian said, targeting what it'd be worth in 6 months. The market has corrected, and I still have way more money than if I had waited.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing you got to remember is they were going up so much, and now they've kind of dipped a little. And even if they continue dipping, which I think we should talk about, it's still higher than when I bought it. Right? Like that's a thing to think about. We tend to look at real estate like it's in the stock market. It goes way up, it comes way down. It doesn't. It goes way up, it comes down some, and then it goes way up again, right? Like over time, it starts to become a very obvious answer that you should be buying real estate and holding. So I think we could talk about, if you guys want, does raising interest rates actually curb inflation? It's a fascinating topic that hardly anyone is mentioning, and there's some wisdom in that. We can talk about the temporary nature of what's happening versus the permanent nature of what's going to happen. Let's see what Kyle says here. I don't know if I'm looking at it this the wrong way, but if you're averaging the last 2 years based on typical appreciation, that means it'll go down 31% before it drops to where it should be on average. Okay, Kyle, how do you see, like, Kyle, we need to get you in here to talk. What I want to know is, how do you see it dropping 31%? Right? Because what you're saying is, if it went up 31% over the last 2 years, it has to come down 31%. But that's assuming that it went up 31% because the value of it increased by 31%. What if it went up by that much because that's how much inflation we had? What if there was 45% inflation? It went up by 31%. It actually didn't keep pace with inflation, so it's not going to go down. Christian, we're going to say something there?
Yeah, this is a really good question, Kyle, and David knocked it right on the head. It's because you're thinking of money that it's worth the same that it was 3 years ago, right? You're looking at money before $3 trillion was printed, right? Before 80% of the money in circulation was put into the industry. This is I struggle with this as well. So I appreciate this question, Kyle, because it's a fair one and we're able to be honest with it. It's just like people in the 90s when interest rates were at 19% and they were buying houses for $100K that are now worth $1.5 million. A dollar means something completely different. So it's easy to say, oh, they had 100, 200, 500%, return or their appreciation over that time. But it's almost a moot point because the dollar has changed so drastically on what it's worth, right? So you're right. A dollar, if you just treat it as a dollar has had the same expense cost the last 2 years, you're right. We'd have to drop 30-something% before we have that 3-year 3% average. But you're not considering the amount that the dollar has changed in value. And if that's, inflation's at 9%, it's actually much higher than that, right? Inflation's not 9%. That's their little CPI data. That's the closest they can get to it. But everything is up much more than 9%, which means you're starting at a baseline of probably 10 or 15% that the dollar has changed in the last year, right? And probably 20% in the last 2 years. So in order to come down to 20%, it's only a 10% drop, right? So good question, but if you look at it from that viewpoint, it brings a lot more understanding to it.
If you guys could keep it going, I'm looking up a example of this. You could keep taking questions, or one of you could keep talking.
Another question we had, Christian, was, do property taxes go up?
Good question. That does depend on the state you're in. Many states you inherit the property tax basis of the previous owner. I believe Arizona and North Carolina fall in that realm, where you just have stable increases no matter who the owner is. Now, if you live in an area like California, on purchase, California property taxes reassess. So that's a big one, right? You can buy grandma's house and she bought it for $40,000. You bought it for $1 million. The taxes will change to that $1 million assessed value, right? So that's a big one. Does depend, very locally regulated though. So I can't answer unless, that's Moises. You're in California. So yes, your taxes will on purchase.
And yeah, David, we actually do have the inflation article was shared here in the comments.
That was me that shared it. I'm just seeing, can we get it to show up on the screen?
Oh yeah, I can definitely try to do that.
This is a great, Kyle, this will help if that didn't make sense what our answer was. I think this will help if you open up this link here. I don't know if Kyle can get it on the screen for us.
Yeah, I'm wondering if can we screen share it, Kyle, or no?
Let's try that. Yeah, give me a second here. I'll pull it right up.
All right, thank you for that. This is a hard thing for us to describe to you guys. It almost feels like you're being lied to and you get angry when you think about it. But here's an analogy to consider. Imagine you're 6 years old and you're responsible for feeding yourself. And you are not going to earn money, but you're going to trade time for food. Okay, you're like a slave, or it's a horrible financial situation. And you agree to work for whatever a 6-year-old eats, right? Like 2 bites of macaroni and cheese, and then they're done. Like all of you that have kids know exactly what I'm talking about. And you're like, hey, I will agree to work 8 hours a day for 2 spoonfuls of macaroni and cheese. That's fine. and they say, okay, great, here's a 30-year contract that's what you're going to get paid. And then you're 7 years old, you're like, man, I'm a little hungrier than I used to be. And you're 8 years old and you're like, I'm hungry every single day. And you're 9 years old and you're like, I can't live off this. Now imagine that you're 19 years old and you're only getting to eat your contractually agreed upon 2 bites of macaroni and cheese every day. That's what's happening with inflation. We are needing more food than what we agreed to before. If you look at what $1 was worth 30 years ago, it's very different than right now. But when you're 6 years old and you're making the decision of how much food you need, you're like, that's plenty. Like, I'm going to work for that. And we can understand this when it comes to us growing, but it's hard for us to understand what the country is doing to decimate how much our dollar is actually worth. Any luck there, Kyle?
Yeah, I got it right here. I'm going to pull it up for you. Like so. All right. Tell me if you can see it.
Alexander, I will answer this before we show this. Has anyone on your team or yourself recently did a cash out refinance to get money at higher rates to buy more cash in the upcoming months? Yes, Christian just did one for me.
This guy has.
Yeah. And I went from like a 3.75 to I think a 5.625, which you guys are like, oh, I'd love a 5.625. I know it still wasn't fun when I had to leave a 3.75. It hurts, but I pulled out over 7 figures, which bought several different rental properties, which are cash flowing much more than what my increased payments are of the old ones. And here's a thought that I had. If you look at how much my rents increased on those properties that I did the refi into the worst rate, my cash flow, even after the refi, is still more than what it was when I bought them at the low rate.
Yeah.
Okay. So because we always look at what am I getting right now going into it? What's my the cash flow is not good enough. I can't buy real estate. When I bought them, I had a modest, reasonable amount of cash flow. After refinancing and pulling out over $1 million at a higher rate, 2 points higher, more than 2 points higher, my cash flow is still more than what it was when I bought them. Like, they have paid for themselves in cash flow. And now I have more than $1 million to go buy more properties, which what do you think is going to happen in 8 years with those? Do you think I might be in a similar position? Probably an even better one because of the inflation. So yeah. I'm big right now. I'm on this kick of asking the right questions. The wrong question is, I don't want, like, do I have to pay a higher rate? The right question is the money I'm borrowing going to be used to get me a better return than the difference, the delta between my old rate and my new rate? All right, Kyle, if you could put that back up.
Cool.
Thank you for asking that, Alexander.
Yeah, super good question. One that we're getting a lot on the lending team. And exactly like David said, depends on your plans with that money. But if it puts you in a better financial position, there are people who have given up their 3% and gotten a 5 or 6 and are in a better financial position, believe it or not. Just depends on your plans for that money, 100%.
And when you look at it logically, you're like, oh, that makes sense. But when you first hear, I have to go from I don't want to lose my 2.99. I have to go into a 7.5. Yeah, you do. It sucks, but it doesn't suck because you have a buttload of equity. You could go buy more real estate at cheaper prices than it's ever been. And you're not in a bidding war with 11 other people. You actually can get the house. In fact, if you guys want to hear about the one I'm putting in contract tonight, we can get into the details of that, but one of you is going to have to actually show up and ask questions. All right. So let's look at this article right here. So if you guys can't see it, it basically shows the value of $1 in the year 2000 to right now in 2022. $1 in 2000 is equivalent in purchasing power to about $1.72 today. Christian, you're good at math, and this is a bit of a softball. What percentage increase is that?
72%.
72%. That's right. Over 22 years, the dollar has been devalued by 72%. That's the majority of 100. That's a lot. Okay. The average inflation rate of 2.5% between the year 2000 and today, producing a cumulative price of 71.99. Now that's over from 2000 to 22. If you just started at like 2010 to now with all the quantitative easing, the lion's share of that increase would have happened during that period of time. The problem is we look at prices in 2000 and what things cost, and in our head, we think it still should cost that. I struggle with this. I went to the grocery store this morning and I bought some frozen shrimp and some ceviche and some cocktail sauce and some wheat thins and some bananas. And did I get anything else? Like probably a couple energy drinks. And it was like $67.
Yeah.
And I just was like, how could it be that much? That was what I spent in a week of food, right? I
remember going to the market and $100 would fill up the entire cart, and I'd be good for like 3 weeks. I'm like, hell yeah.
And I just forget $100 is not $100. It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
It's been reduced by 72%. According to this article. So when you see inflation doing this, you have to play offense. You have to keep your foot on the gas. You have to make more money than the year before. Imagine if you had a job and you have like a contract where you're negotiated a 3% raise every year, but we're currently diluting the money supply by 25 to 30% every year. You know how much money you're losing when that happens? Like you have to keep making, you have to make more money just to stay even. So this one had like, I heard Patrick Bet-David, I think, talk about this on his podcast. And I looked this up and I was like, wow, 72% just from when I graduated high school to now. That's a little over 20 years. You know, like how fast is that doubling? And if you look at how much quantitative easing is going on, you can expect even more of that in the future. Kyle, have we had anybody that's willing to come in yet?
No, nobody actually. Got a lot of people, I think, a little bit nervous about coming in. Just a reminder for those that are maybe just getting here or just joining us. If you guys have a specific question, if you want to talk about inflation, if you want to talk about how inflation is impacting real estate or your real estate investing career, text us at the number below, 833-777-0309. And you can come on live and ask your question to David, Christian, and myself.
Kyle, to your point, not Kyle Ranke, the Kyle in our chat. I agree inflation has a big effect and can't predict exact numbers because of that, but I don't think using the 2-year average to predict growth will be accurate. It's not. That's why we gave you a 22-year average of 3.5%, but the majority of it has happened in the last like probably 8 years or so, a ton of it, maybe the last 10 years for sure. And what's going to happen over the next 10 years? That's the right question. It doesn't matter what inflation was. The only reason we even asked the question of what was it is for the purpose of trying to predict what it's going to be. The only time we look back at anything is to try to figure out what can I expect, right? Like this team is playing that team in the Super Bowl. Who's going to win? This guy's fighting that guy in the UFC. Well, we're like, well, let's see how he did against this person. Like you look back at their career and try to figure out how they perform there to predict what's going to happen. But all we really want to know is the future. If they're making this much money, they're printing this much money, inflation is already this rapid, and they're doing everything they can to slow it down, which is pushing interest rates up incredibly fast. It's not just that they're high. I don't know that they are high compared to like over the history of the United States. It's that they got this high this quick.
Yeah.
This is like Christian's Tesla Plaid, right? It's not that it necessarily is going faster than every car made. It gets there so dang fast. Like it's that acceleration is what scares you, right? We've seen these rates going up so fast. There is fear in our current administration that they have really screwed up by printing all this money. And they think that by raising rates, they're going to slow it down. They're not. Like, I don't have a perfect example for you guys, but inflation will slow the velocity of money. It will slow how quickly money changes hands. That will stop the prices of certain things from increasing. It does not stop overall inflation. That is a tsunami that they are out there with like a sandbag trying to slow down. It cannot stop. You cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube. You cannot take this money out of the economy. It's going to be here. The only way that they could stabilize pricing is by increasing a lot more supply. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but nobody in our country wants to work anymore. It's hard to get anyone to want to go build houses. There's a ton of regulation. It's not in builders' best interest to make them. If we actually wanted to like take the supply chain, for instance, we get a lot of our stuff from China. We complain about it. I don't want to put all of our put ourselves in China's hands where they can disrupt us. Okay, well, do you want to pay $120 for a t-shirt? Because at American labor prices with American regulations and OSHA and American real estate prices, that's what, I don't know if the 120 is exactly accurate, but the point is it's way more expensive than paying $12 to get it sent from a third world country with very cheap labor, very cheap materials, very cheap management, very cheap real estate, no regulation at all, right? Like that's the price we're going to have to pay. And it goes the same with if we want to stop the price of these assets increasing, we got to make a lot of them. We need a lot of people to go do the work. And now you want someone to work, they want to get paid $80 an hour, right? When we were in Scottsdale, I actually had this like little epiphany. Like, these houses, guys, are beautiful. They're huge. They're awesome. And I'm like, how on earth is this thing only 1.2 million? Right? I know that sounds like a lot of money, but if you see, it's like 6,000 square feet on a huge lot in an expensive area. Well, it hit me. The reason it's 6 million is because when they built it 12 years ago, they paid somebody $4 an hour to do the labor. And they probably bought the land for 20 grand because it was the middle of a desert and nobody was going there. It didn't have the reputation it has right now. The cost of making that thing when it was built was minuscule compared. If you try to build it right now, it'd be way more than 1.2 million. You can't find a person to go do the stuff for $4 an hour. And real estate is a great store of energy. It's stored its wealth very good over time. All right, Kyle, that's about as long as I can go here before we get someone that wants to come in. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is all really good stuff. It seems like we just got a lot of shy people today. Oh, we got one coming in here in a minute. So give me like a couple seconds to get them in. But this is a really good topic overall. I think a lot of this kind of loops into what we've been saying. A couple questions that I have for you guys, especially you, Christian. First of all, Emily said, "Hey, David and David's team. She's a super fan of us. Thank you for everything we do. Very much appreciated. We appreciate you, Emily. Thank you so much." Alexander was wondering, who's the point of contact for the loan team on a cash out refi? Is the best place the intake at? Is it intake at theonebrokers.com?
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I don't know if you got the little button to throw it up there. I can type it in the chat as well. But intake at theonebrokers.com is absolutely the best way to get in touch with
You
our
don't have
team.
to type it. We'll put it up on the screen here.
Okay,
Yep.
I just quick send.
Boom.
There you go.
Man. And then the other thing, we had another question for you along those same lines, Christian. If you guys are lending in Ohio yet, and more specifically, maybe you can let people know where you are lending.
Yeah, good question. Ohio, we're not conventionally approved yet. So if you're looking for a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, all those conforming loan products, we can't. But we do have non-conventional financing options in Ohio, especially our investor-friendly products like our program that only takes the income of the property and doesn't need your taxes. We can offer that, but we're still waiting for that approval to come through conventionally. So if you're looking for that, stand by for us. We should have it. We're looking to be nationwide by the end of the year here. These states, some of them really take a long time because there's a big traffic jam of applications in there. But keep up to date with us. We'll let you know once we are. If you can also email intake, and we have a little mailer list to notify you once you're in our market.
But Jenna, if you're looking to get a loan that doesn't require your own DTI, we can do those, and that's what most of our investors are doing. Would you say,
Correct.
Christian, the majority of people are taking that route?
60 to 70% probably. Yeah, definitely in the majority. We still do a lot of conventional stuff. We just do high volume all over the place, but definitely more interest in the non-conventional, especially right now with rates cranking up where, people may not qualify conventionally anymore, right? Rates have gotten too high. Their debt to income's out of whack. So you got to pivot to a different loan product.
All right. We see Kyle here. I know there's two Kyles. It's confusing. But Kyle's watching 11th month old, so that's why he can't come in. He said, talk more about the retreat. Let's do that while Kyle's getting our next guest teed up. Kyle, if you could just give me like the sign when you're ready, like the indicators, the earlobe, and then I just see two shoulder touches, and I know you're ready to still third. Thank you. Do kids still do that in Little League? Do they still use signs? You don't hear about that in pop culture.
Yeah, there's hand signs.
Yeah.
That was the funnest part. You're like watching the third base coach. You're like trying really hard to try to remember. All right. So the retreat is a way that I can pour into people individually and really put you in an environment that is intense, going to push you out of your comfort zone, going to sort of like wear you down with information to get through the defenses people have. So it's easy to listen to this and be like, yeah, David and Christian made a couple good points about inflation. I'll think about it, but I'm going to wait for the crash. And if that's what you're thinking, then you're waiting for something that may happen, but probably won't happen. Like we're seeing a correction. I've said for a long time, expect a correction, expect it to be in some markets, but not others. Expect it to be more intense in some markets than others. I even gave you guys examples of markets where I thought we'd see a correction. But I've been saying for years, we're not going to get a crash. Quit saying we're going to get a crash. The only thing that would cause a crash would be if we went to war, if we had an incredible depression where like people just could not get loans anymore. The way things are going now, that's not going to happen. So you come to the retreat, and it really gives me an opportunity to not just make a statement like there's inflation. I can teach you this is what quantitative easing is. This is how much money the government is making. This is a graph that shows the last 200 years and how much we have now. This is the way that smart money managers are trying to deploy capital, and it makes its way into real estate. This is what hedge funds are doing that are much smarter than any of us. They're buying real estate in these areas. This is supply and demand, and this is what determines if prices go up and down. So when you're there, you really get this like big picture that makes these comments that I make, these one-off, like inflation is high. That doesn't mean a whole lot to you. It's like I threw a jab. Come into this thing is like you're in the whole fight. You're like, oh, I see it now. I can see what David is saying. So I teach these principles of building wealth, picking the right properties, choosing which area you should be investing in, what I call like fundamentals. And then I will take an example that I bought and say, here's how I use these principles in this deal. So remember how, Kyle was showing you guys, this is the way that you save money negotiating an inspection report. This is the exact way we did that on this house. This is what we did when the low appraisal come in to knock the price down by this much money. This is when I knew I should push hard and get the seller to come down versus I just need to take this deal right now. Here's what I paid. Here's what they appraised for. Here's the poor marketing pictures that let me know I should chase that. If you were in my office watching me look at deals on my computer screen and making decisions on them, this is what you'd be seeing. So that's what the idea is for the retreat. And then in addition to that, you're going to meet all the other investors. You're going to have a lot of mindset stuff that gets posed, like challenging you to think differently. So you're going to be more successful. You're going to build new relationships. We have a bunch of fun. I mean, would you guys agree that most people there were having a good time?
Oh man, we're having a great time. I mean, it was just fun learning so much. I mean, there really wasn't a ton of downtime where we were just hanging out, except like after 10 p.m. But yeah, it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, we were like hanging out the whole time. A lot of laughing, a lot of shooting pool. You get to see my house, that one I bought with Rob. That's just a pretty cool house. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah,
I don't
went in the pool, backyard. We had a night at Top Golf. I think it was a great trip. It was a great time.
Yeah. Lots of fun, lots of laughing, lots of Napoleon Dynamite impressions. So you're basically like, if I'm going to work you, I'm going to work you that hard to get, it has to be fun also. Like nobody wants to just take medicine the whole time. So
yeah,
you got to put a little spoonful of sugar in there. And now those people that are there, they're like, I mean, they're friends now, right? You get to know someone for 4 days in a row, hanging out. We're all sleeping in the same area. We're getting to know each other at a deep level. We're sharing fears. We're sharing struggles. People are talking about what they did or didn't do that didn't work. And I'm giving my advice and everyone's hearing. So I feel like if you wanted to like break a habit, this is the way you do it. You go put yourself in an environment like that, that's fun and challenging for a couple days in a row. And you can't be the same when you leave. So the people who went there, I fully expect that they're going to be taking action. Like somebody just already hit me up today and said, there's a house in San Diego I want to take a look at. She asked me about an agent we could connect her with. Other people are like, one of the guys, when he was there, came to me with a house. This is funny. It was Pedro. He's like, hey, David, based on what you said, what do you think about this house? I said, Pedro, that is one of the houses I was looking at in Fort Lauderdale. Okay. I wrote an offer on that house. It had only been on the market 60 days. It's now been on the market 120. Like that will work. The only reason I didn't get it is they didn't want to come in at my price. And I bought a bunch of other ones. And he goes, really? Because I called the listing agent. He said they want to play ball. I was like, yeah, I bet they do. It's been 60 more days. Here's my agent's phone number. Call him. Pedro's probably going to put that house under contract. That's a house I literally would have bought.
Yeah.
So like that's the reason we have retreats, because you probably wouldn't do that type of thing if you weren't in that environment.
And I really liked it. It was because of the volume that David's buying right now. It wasn't like, oh, here's a property that David bought 20 years ago. And of course it worked because it's been 20 years. Like these are things that right now in this market with these interest rates that we're finding opportunities to work. And like, you know, that's some important information, right?
Yeah, and then Christian gets to share what he did to make the financing work.
Yeah, and no matter who you guys are, I don't care who you are, you're an easier file than David. If I can make it work for David, I can make it work for you.
That's funny.
Yeah, I love it. Mickey says to you, Kyle, I can proudly say I was part of the first retreat. It was awesome. It was an awesome experience, a lot to learn and expand your perspective and how you look at real estate in general. Awesome. And yeah, I know Kyle asked, will you help us close a deal during the retreat? And yes, I mean, that's the whole purpose of the retreat. You've got David there to teach all of the content, all of the high level, but also down into the nitty gritties of the deals. And then you got Christian to talk about all the different loan products, loan options, financing options you can use. And then you got me to come in and talk about the negotiation tactics and strategies that you can use to close on that deal. So that's a huge thing. I mean, I walked away from that retreat and I already found another house hack that I want to put an offer on this week. And that was within like 5 days. So absolutely.
Yeah, Kyle,
that is the
not to
intention.
interrupt you. Would you say you probably wouldn't have looked at that house with the same lens if you hadn't just been at the retreat?
Correct. Yeah. I took, this is what I told you on the phone, David. I took the David Green goggles and put them on. And then all of a sudden I'm like Neo in the Matrix and I'm seeing things completely different than I'd ever seen before.
Yeah, we actually, Christian, I told you about this deal. There's a way that Kyle, because he's an agent, will be able to buy this $800,000 property for less than asking price, put zero money in of his own, and end up with a 4-unit hack in a good area on a big lot, right? And because he's a licensed agent, he can probably get the down payment completely covered by the buyer and his closing costs covered. It ends up being like a no-brainer, but you wouldn't have even looked at that property
infinite return on
the same
investment.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not to mention it's 8 minutes from my kid's school. So it's a win-win.
not bad.
Yeah. So thank you for asking about that, Kyle. He's like, what's this retreat they're talking of? And everyone else is like, this is all they've talked about the whole show. All right. Let's bring in Derek Delgado.
Cool. All right. We're going to bring in Mr. Derek Delgado here. He's thinking about saving 25% down for a home. He's 20 years old, but he's got some different options that he's trying to weigh in terms of what he should do, especially in this market. But his biggest question is, he just dropped off. Derek, you're gone. Come back and join us. But his biggest question was, should he... Oh, here he comes. There we go.
Perfect.
Welcome back. There you go.
Whoa.
Welcome back to the stream, Derek. Your biggest
Hi.
question, it seems like, is should you buy now or should you wait to buy, especially in the Miami market? Can you expound a little bit about your scenario and what you're looking to do?
Yeah, so my plan, or I guess my an idea I guess I had, was to try to, I guess, save 25% of the home value and to try to put down, because I know, there's FHA loans where you could put down as little as 3.5% or up to 5%. And then given that, if I'm not mistaken, there's like a 2% to 3.5% fee that you have to, for like the realtor to make like to make it happen. And on top of that, it's like walking in with another 1.5%, assuming you have to do certain repairs to the home. And I guess like in the end, I'd be left with 10% of the home value. But ideally, I'd be trying to get a multi-family home and do duplex type of thing, or already get into a home with a duplex and rent it out. I'm not sure if I'm getting my my idea across, but I just wanted to know if it's like how you guys thought about it and what your take is on it.
Did you follow, Christian?
I'm trying to. So, and you're breaking up a little bit here. But from what I'm catching is that you're saying there's the fee that the realtor makes. And are you saying if you have your real estate license, you can make that? Is that what you're getting at? You were cutting up a little bit. I want to make sure I'm clarifying it.
So in the fee that you have to for the realtor and the closing costs with the down payment, and assuming you already have to do, let's say, like 2% of the home value to repairs or to rehab or whatnot, it would be left roughly with 10% of the home value. I guess I just wanted to know if that's like a good, I guess like a good foundation for like a first property, so to speak.
Okay, I think I got you. So you're adding everything up, and I think there's a little bit difference in understanding. So let me clarify here. So for FHA, 3.5% down is the minimum down payment, right? So if you have $1 million property, 35K is your down payment. As the buyer, you do not pay the real estate commissions. That's paid by the seller.
Oh, okay.
So don't add that 2.5% onto your closing costs, right? Now, there will be fees that you're responsible for, such as title escrow fees, your appraisal, you're going to pay for an inspection, most likely. There are fees that you can pile up, but a tactic that we've preached a lot is that your realtor can negotiate seller credits for you. And what that means is the seller will agree to your $1 million purchase. You'll put 3.5% down, but they'll credit you with a little bit of money. So that'll be say you get a 2% seller credit, that'll be $20,000. That'll more than enough cover your title fees, your escrow fees, your appraisal, maybe the payment for your rate buy down, right? And you can get all those closing costs covered to where you only come in with the 3.5% down payment. And you have the seller pay your realtor, which is always the case. You don't have to negotiate that in. And then the seller can credit you a little bit for your closing costs so that you bring it as close to that 3.5% down minimum contribution as possible.
Right. Okay. And I guess in terms of, I guess Miami would, because I know Miami is pretty, I guess everything is pretty high. Would it be best to go into areas like in the outskirts? If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Good question. David, do you want to grab that one?
Because I grew up here. I mean, I'm only 20 years old, and I'm just trying to get my feet wet in it.
Okay, so when you say too high, let's dig into what you mean by that. Are you saying it's too much for you to be pre-approved for, or are you saying it just feels hot and it would be wise to avoid buying there?
I would say both, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, if it's too much for you to be approved for, that answers the question right away. You got to buy where you're pre-approved for. If not, I would say many of the hottest markets are hot for a reason. Like, don't assume because everyone's buying somewhere, it's a bad idea to buy. Do you know? I know you mentioned you're only 20, so you might not follow like shifting population demographics, but do you have an idea why Miami real estate is becoming so expensive?
I mean, to be honest, I've lived here all my life, and to me, it's just more like there's always more people coming to Miami.
Okay, what kind of people are coming there right now?
That's a good question. I mean, I can't really say what kind of people. I would say more like Hispanics. I mean, a lot of people here are Hispanic. There's myself, so people are coming from Latin America.
That is true, but those aren't the ones driving up the prices. The reason your prices are going up is because Wall Street bankers, Wall Street companies,
New York,
big New York money is moving there. And when anytime people make a lot of money, move it. Like if you've ever heard about what happens when Californians move into a market, it's why they hate Californians. We go to Idaho, we go to Arizona, we drive the prices of everything up because we have more money. Same thing happens with New York. So the reason Miami's going up is actually solid fundamentals. The people moving there are wealthier. The companies moving there are making more money. Prices are going up for the right reason. It's not necessarily a bubble. So if you could afford to buy in Miami, I'd say that would be better to do because odds are that's going to continue. People are going to leave New York. They want to go into that area. Now, if you can't afford it, do what I did. Not that I can't afford it, but I went into areas that I think are going to spill over from Miami into them. So I went to Hollywood. I went to Fort Lauderdale. I went to is it Pompano or Pompano? I forget every time, man.
Pompano Beach.
Pompano Beach. I always want to say Pompano. I don't know why. Pompano.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I went to Pompano Beach because those are areas north of Miami that I think when people say Miami's too expensive, I can't get a house here, or the houses are, I don't want a condo, I want an actual house. Those are markets they're going into.
Yeah.
And so I went to buy there ahead of where I see things going. So as you at 20 years old, if you can't afford Miami, go into those markets that I just bought into. Find yourself something that you could house hack in that area, that you could live in the garage or convert it into living space and rent out the house as a short-term rental, right? So maybe you live for free, you keep saving money, and you do that every year.
Right. I mean, even then, right? Like I would live there like a year, like you mentioned. But even then, like, I mean, I'm only 20 years old, so I don't mind like saving up as much money to make it happen in Miami instead of going like settling for the outskirts. And I guess it's more so like I don't have to live in the property. I could always like just stay at my parents and then rent that out as well, along with the actual rental, aside from the house hacking and trying to split it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I don't want to take a easy route here, but the answer could be both, right? Maybe you start off on the lower price point, which is probably outside of Miami, right? You get a 2, 3, 4 unit, maybe a single family with an ADU, right? Something that you can house hack, something that you can move out of in a year and get a renter in there. And, maybe then you build up some equity in that house over 2 or 3 years, and maybe you create a 5-year plan to get into Miami, right? And that starter house, or maybe 1 or 2 starter houses, offer you the opportunity to get into the Miami house. So you can set, your end goal doesn't have to be your next house, right? You don't have to decide outskirts or Miami. The outskirts could help you get into Miami long-term, right? You just have to
Right.
scale out your timeline of expectations to 5-7 years. But hey, in 7 years, if I told you right now you could have 6 or 7 Florida homes and maybe 6 of them are in the outskirts and one's in Miami, you would probably take that, right?
Yeah.
100%, right? And now you're not thinking, man, would I rather have just saved up over 7 years to get one in Miami? Probably not. You'd probably take the 7 homes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that a lot of people get into the analysis paralysis of like, I got to get into this area, and they don't really consider I could create steps that get me there over time.
True, and like I don't disagree with you, but I guess it's the concept of like me settling and waiting a little longer. It won't be a significant amount of years. It'll probably be like, let's say, an additional 2 years to get into it.
So Derek, I'd say wait if you need to wait for your personal financial situation.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough money, if your job's not stable, that's okay. Do not wait because you think the market's going to go down more than it. Don't try to be smarter than the market.
Understood.
Make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Well, thanks for coming in, man. I'm glad you actually had the cojones to come in here when everybody else was scared to show up.
No, for sure. I mean,
you're a good-looking young man. You look good on camera.
Thank you. I mean, I always just try to I'm just trying to learn, just trying to get my feet wet, but I just trying to read a lot more, and I guess it's just something I'm really trying to get into within within the next couple of years and whatnot.
Yeah.
Since I'm
Surround yourself with men. Get on Bigger Pockets. Come to things like this. That's why these are here, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, yeah. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
See you, Derek. Very cool. Very cool. All right. As we wrap up tonight, we definitely have one last person here. Alex got in just at the last minute, had to restart his computer, do a bunch of stuff. He had a question about a cash out refi, right?
Yes, thank you so much, three of you. Appreciate the last, I guess, question there. Thank you so much. Had to put the kids to bed, which had movie night, so I had to restart my computer. So forgive me for that. So I've been, of course, listening to you guys for a while. I guess I missed the refi opportunity when rates were at like 5%. By the time I realized it, I'll step back. I have about 8 years now of rental experience. I have 6 properties under my belt, and they're all just single family. A couple of them are duplexes. And so I missed the cash out refi period where I could have gotten a really good rate. Now I have all this equity. There's a couple of places I could go to get HELOCs, and their interest rates are much higher. There's a couple opportunities to get unsecured lines of credit. I'm just curious what do you guys think. If you missed out on the refi, you're looking at the potential kind of reduction in prices, right? I think maybe the most 20%. I'm kind of with David there, but I'm looking at what the Fed rates are and what they're projecting 2-3 years out, and I feel like I've kind of missed the opportunity to do the cash out refi. And is my best option now just to use these other opportunities, like a line of credit or some sort of unsecured line, if I find a deal, or do you guys think there's a better option, or should I still do a cash out refi at more of these higher 7, 7.3 or 7.7 type of rates? So I just want to see what you guys thought there.
That's a good question. You want to start it, David, or do you want me to start? Okay.
ahead.
So I'd say you're looking back, and it's the same argument of people who I wish I bought in 2019. Of course, most people are going to say that, right? I wish I bought when the rates were 2% and yada, yada.
Yeah.
However, the buying opportunity may have not been there, right? People thought COVID was going to end the world, right? You had to overoffer everything. You had to offer $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 over value. So even though you got that 3% interest rate, maybe you had to come up with $100,000 extra for your down payment. And that impacted your ROI numbers, right? So what I'd say, and we have this conversation all day, and I appreciate you asking this in a public forum because I can have it with multiple people through the audience. Run your numbers and pick an investment strategy for those funds where you would theoretically deploy those funds, right? And don't just look on your cash on cash return. Like David said, look at maybe the appreciation of rents in an area, right? Do you believe in a market like Miami or LA or wherever you're going to invest, right? Do you believe that the rents are going to be more in 5 years, right? And obviously build in your sustainability of your income. That's a risk factor, right? Do you have enough sustainable, income to see you through that process? But think of the tax deductions that it's going to give you, right? Think of the benefit in long-term appreciation, maybe not appreciation. And I should specify that because Kyle was in the not Renke, the one that was in the chat. You may not see appreciation next year, but you may see it over 5 or 10 years, right?
Right.
You know, you're going to have tenants and they're paying down your mortgage. So, and you have your money in your bank account losing 10%. Now, what a lot of people get into is that they go lose their rate and they cash out and then they don't deploy those funds. And you just wrecked your 3% interest rate for no benefit. And then they sit on that money and then they're trying to time the market crashing and then they're trying to do all this stuff, right? And you never deploy those funds and you lost out on a great interest rate and you took no advantage of it. If you build your plan before you take the first step, it would be my advice, right? Know the type of market that you're going to target, know the type of loan product you're going to get, run your numbers, be happy with the results, then decide, am I open to increasing my mortgage by $1,200 a month to go make $2,500 a month? Then it's a much more obvious of an answer, right? If we could have an agreement between me and you right now where you hand me $1,200 a month and I turn around and hand you $1,500 back, you probably take that deal, right? But if I told you your interest rate is 15% on that $1,200 you gave me, does that really change if that's a good deal or not?
Right. I wasn't trying to get hung up. So I go back to that analogy I think, David, you gave out a couple days ago about kind of building a pyramid of portfolio. Yeah. And I was just trying to make sure I didn't wreck myself by having all this cash and then I don't deploy it because I don't find the right deal or something like that. But great point though.
No, I think, okay, so there's always, how do I want to say this? Because there's such a piece of wisdom. I've just never thought about how to articulate it. There's always, for every pro, there's a con. Okay. Like we always tend as human beings to look at what is bad without thinking about how that could be good. It's a normal thing to think about, right? So in general, if someone says, hey, do you want the government to provide free something? We say yes. Why would we say no? Okay, great. We're going to increase your taxes, but oh, well, I didn't think about that. It's not actually free, right? There's no like free lunch. You just move around energy or money. So when rates were low, which everyone says they want, every talk we did like this, Alexander, was it's a bidding war. The market's too hot. I can't get anything. I've been outbid on my last 4 houses. This numbers don't make sense. I don't want to waive my contingencies. I'm going to wait.
Right.
Okay. Well, they're not just, if rates stay low, the assets themselves are not going to become more available to you unless something about them becomes less desirable. If the government's outlaw short-term rentals, if we change tax laws so they don't favor investors, something has to happen to make it so you can actually get that house. And then we complain about that.
Right.
I don't want to buy real estate because this thing happened. Well, it just happened that rising rates is what became available. So what I like to do is take the contrarian view. When everybody else is fearful, I want to be greedy. When they're greedy, I want to be fearful. So rates are high. That sucks. I can acknowledge that. But what is the benefit of that? So what Christian's saying is, yeah, if you got to refinance these properties, you're going to get a higher rate. That's bad. But everyone else is in the same boat. So less people are going after these homes. That means that seller that needs to sell, that's listed at 1.2, that is worth 1.2, that it would have been worth 1.25 if the market was still hot. They're sitting there sweating it out for 78 days and they don't know what to do. And you got this money and you come in and buy it for $975. Never could have done that in any other situation, right? So even though the downside is you had to pay more for that money, what did that money get you? It got you more than it would have 4 years ago.
300,000 in equity up front.
right off the bat. And then what happens if rates go down in a year? They go back down to 4%. What's going to, that $975,000 place is now at 1.25 again. And you made it super fast. Like it's almost like cheating.
Right. So I guess if I can, split the hairs or spice the hairs, however the term is, instead of refining out. So I'm looking at about 250 that I was thinking about pulling out. It just was the appreciation wasn't there when rates were at 5% last year. So it just wasn't there. So now it made sense, but it's the opposite now has happened. So my current thought was, because I focus on the Richmond, Virginia area. I have some in DC and that's kind of my area. So I determined that it was probably better to have lines of credit open and ready to deploy when it's needed, or even have unsecured lines of funds, even though they're much higher. Because then I can build that, because I was trying to go back to that analogy. I think, David, you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, was if you have a number of properties that have cash flow really well, even if the deal takes a while to get there, you have a number, because, as you build that pyramid, I think that was the analogy you gave, forgive me if I butchered it.
Yeah.
But you have properties to offset. And I've had that deals where the appraiser didn't come in as, I had to wait a couple times to get it appraised. So I was kind of nervous because now I'm going to go from each property having $1,000 cash flow after all reserves
Yeah.
to now having $200. And now I'm like,
I see what you're
I'm,
saying.
really, I'm
Yeah,
nervous because I'm just
basically
like,
the base of your pyramid is shrinking as you take this money out.
Right. And I'm
Base of the
looking
pyramid,
at
the cash flow you built it on.
correct. And I'm looking at the federal, the FOMC, kind of their dot line charts. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, they think by 2024 they'll come down. But of course, that's subject to change. I don't want to be a risky, player in this kind of investment game, or just the philosophy there. So that's why I was thinking, okay, I missed it. I have to own it. I didn't think it through. Should I be using these lines of credits and unsecured lines as an option? Because I feel like that's better than trying to refi out now. But what are your thoughts there?
Christian, you have anything you want to comment before I do?
Yeah, so here's something to consider too. You missed, property valuations in 2019 and 2020 weren't what they are now, right?
Right.
And yes, we've had a 5 to 10% correction, or we're in line for a 5 to 10%, obviously market specific. But property values in these last 6 months are higher than they've ever been. So even though there may be a little bit of a loss out, and David's analogy of everything pro has a con, your property also has the highest potential of appraising high right now, which gives you the most access to equity, right? So that's something that maybe you didn't miss out on, right? Now, the decision between cash out and HELOC or line of credit, we can absolutely have that. I think that's a little bit that's an in-depth one because I have some opinions both ways. If you do want to see what we have to offer, I would definitely say that intake at the One Brokerage email. I'm happy to have a 30-minute conversation with you, the pros and cons of each.
I already sent the email. Yep, I already sent the email.
Awesome. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
I do think that's probably a little much for here, just because I have a lot to say about that. Excuse me. But David, if you want to comment as well.
No. Do you have any questions on that, Alexander?
No, I appreciate the thought. Just appreciate you guys give me.
Let me answer a question you didn't ask, just because everybody listening, I want them to hear this.
Sure.
I'm not as worried. How do I want to put this? I don't think property values are going to just keep going down. Okay. Like they're going to come back up. Rates are going to go back down again. Even if they don't, you're going to see property values come back up just from pure inflation. But even if you took that out of it, that's going to happen. I don't know when, but it will happen. That's not the concern to have. The concern I think that people should have is, especially if we're talking about the short-term rental space, the cash flow that you can expect from a short-term rental might be significantly hampered. That is much more of a concern to me than the value of the actual property. Right?
Yeah, I don't even touch that space.
And I don't think it's going to be because people stop traveling. I don't think it's going to be, it's because there's too many damn people buying short-term rentals. The supply available, even though supply of real estate in general is not high, which is why the asset price climbs, the supply of short-term rentals specifically becomes too high, which means the rent you charge does get capped. And I'm pointing it out because it's easy to lump it all in the same boat, because it has been.
Yeah,
property values go up, short-term rental prices go up, cash flow is going up, everything's going up. I think you will start to see that the value of the assets can climb, but the actual cash flow of the short-term rental could stop. So what I'm doing to combat that is I'm just trying to buy something unique, something rare, something in an area that maybe doesn't have as high of an upside, but definitely doesn't have as low of it. I'm almost investing defensively. Now, my price points are higher, which throws people off because they're like, how are you investing defensively if you're buying $1 million house? Because there's not very many of them, because they can sleep 30 people, because they're in areas and locations that are different than all the others, right? If we see too many short-term rentals come on the market in any particular market, I don't want the cookie cutter thing that looks like everything else. I don't want to be competing for the same people. And the only value I have is be cheaper. You end up in the Walmart problem, right? I want to have something unique and different that will hold its value more likely. So if you do pull this money out and go reinvest it, I don't know. It's like a sixth sense I have. Don't go to the starter homes or the most basic thing you can find and be like, all right, well, my ROI is highest on this cheap house, so that's what I'm going to buy. Because you might find yourself one of 20 cheap homes and there's only 10 people that want to rent it. That's what my fear would be. And that's the advice that I give somebody is, even though there's more opportunity right now, you kind of got to be more clever and wise about where you go deploy your money.
Yeah, on that topic, I think, so I do a lot, me and my family do a lot of traveling in Florida, and I've noticed with the short-term rentals, there's the past 3 years, because we've been going for about 5 years, there's been a flood of short-term rentals. And it's eventually going to be cities like Atlanta. It's going to just do a lot of these regulations that'll kind of, bring competition down, and then prices are just going to go to the basement with that. But for the strategy, I was thinking, and you said this, I think a couple of weeks ago, I've always targeted B neighborhoods or C to B neighborhoods. Like they're kind of gradually moving. And that's the only way I was able to go from DC, which is more appreciation, not cash flow, properties I've had for years, moved it to Richmond, and those have ballooned, right? So, but yeah, I've tried to focus on kind of college areas just because they tend to have a really good growth.
You're not dependent on short-term rentals. You have strong fundamentals. There's a lot of demand. You're sort of taking the tortoise, not the hare approach, and I like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely. It's just easier for me to manage, and of course, I definitely don't have the wallets that you guys have, so I don't have the war chest to try to combat, what happens going on. But yeah,
you combat it by taking less risk in the property you're buying, right?
Right. And that to me is the smartest thing, which is why I was so hesitant that I missed out on the opportunity to refi. And I was like, let me not risk it because I have such a good cash flow base that I didn't want to risk it. But
I hear what you're saying, and I don't mean to sound like the guy that tells everyone to play fast and loose. There's just a way to do it that isn't as risky as you think. If you do this cash out refinance, you pay a higher rate than you wanted to, you go buy more real estate. Well, when the rates come back down, the real estate you bought will go up in value, and you do another rate and term refi, you get back to a rate much closer to what you're at now. And so you end up with almost the same rate plus the effing assets that you just went out there and bought that are all becoming worth more exponentially. And now you look brilliant, but it's kind of common sense. Like, I don't think rates are going to go up to 20%. Right. And I know, in fact, I'd say I know they're not going to, because how long do we have with Biden as president? How many more years till we vote again?
Two more years.
All right. What are the odds he's getting voted in again? If you're a betting man.
I mean, I hope he gets out, but that's just my opinion. But
what are the odds that he's going to get reelected, Alexander? Based on,
I would say less than 50. I think it's
incredibly low. He's not going to be the president unless something wild changes or something. Like, it's not going to happen.
But even then, though, the Fed has already said that they're going to have to bring back the funds rate. So I'm using that as a base. I think
there you go.
Like what you're saying, it makes sense.
Yeah, so it's going to happen. So
yeah, they're not concealing their long-term strategy, right? They're making it very obvious that what their short-term strategy is, but they still have a goal to bring it back down a year or 2 years from now, right?
They just try to curb inflation before we elect our next president, so he can say, "Hey, I did everything I could."
Exactly.
And I'm not trying to be political. I promise you, it's common sense. If you were the president, you want to get reelected, you do the same thing.
Yeah.
Inflation's
you don't want to be Carter.
They're all mad at me. Yeah, I got to do something. And it seems
Yeah.
draconian, but that's what I got to do. Well, when the next president comes in, he doesn't have that problem. He's got 4 more years. He's going to slash it. It's going to be a party. Doesn't matter who it is. That's like the first thing that's going to happen. So that's the way that I'm playing the cards. I see that happening. Obviously, there's things you do to hedge your bets because black swans happen, things that you can't see happen. That's why we talk about making money and saving money. It's why we started off this whole show talking about that, because if you've got enough money in reserves and the worst case scenario that you're afraid of happens, you're okay.
Right. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much again for your time.
Thanks, Alexander.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I hope you are enjoying this. Please do us a favor, like and subscribe to this channel. I need to get more subscribers on YouTube because, frankly, I think that the three of us are smarter than most people you listen to, and they have more followers. And this is, what's the thing the Big Lebowski says? This indiscretion cannot stand. What is it? Something like that, right?
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Yeah, same here.
This indiscretion cannot stand. Besides, you guys are better listeners than everybody else has. You're smarter, you're better, you're staying up later. I love it. So thank you guys for participating in this with us and joining us tonight. Please do subscribe to the channel. And if you liked it, if you had a good time listening to this, share it with your friends. Just be like, hey, check out these guys. They're pretty cool. And they said some good stuff. Kyle here says lots of good nuggets, but best overall advice for each of you for REI beginners moving forward. You guys want to wrap up with that?
Let's wrap up with that.
Just in general, I didn't hear the question. So just best overall advice from each of you for all REI beginners moving forward. It's a good question. I'd say invest within your means. I think that's what I built my base on. Obviously it's easy to hear, David kind of mentioned on our previous guest there, like we're not being the people telling everybody to just invest fast and loose, right? With no regard for your financial situation, with no hesitations, anything, right? But if you build that pyramid that David was talking about, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it has a base of stability. That could be a W-2 job. It could be cash flowing assets. It could be money in the bank. It could just be reserves. It's something that's stable, consistent, knowing that it's going to carry you through. You can slowly build riskier assets on top of it. Obviously, somebody like David is able to buy big properties because he has a very stable core. He has a very stable foundation, right? I'm trending in that direction. So by no means are we telling everybody go buy $1 million cabins in the Smokies, right? Because there is some risk involved with that.
Kyle has
But-
the most stable core because he's been fasting for 72 days.
Very
His
stable
core is yes.
Yes, it's rock solid.
Kyle's body could take care of a chocolate chip cookie better than mine could. I guarantee you that. I don't know if I could deal with the risk of a chocolate chip cookie at this point. But yeah, honestly, guys, regardless of where your situation is, these foundations and these methods that we're trying to teach, they can be implemented at every level of beginner all the way through seasoned investor, right? If you're practicing good financial literacy, surrounding yourself with stuff like this, little bits are going to resonate with different people. And use what resonates with you and invest in what you believe in. That's my not so quick tip.
I like that, Christian. Yeah, and I'm going to build onto that a little bit. Like you said, live below your means, save money, pay down debt, right? Be smart with money first. That's the most important thing. If you can be trusted with a little, you can be trusted with a lot.
That's good.
And then the second thing I'd say is build skills. Build as many skills as you can that are pertinent to real estate. Learn how to negotiate. Learn how to run analyses on property. Learn about the market of where you want to invest in the ins and the outs. Get as connected as you can.
Oh,
Is
man,
that me or
lose
did we
Kyle?
just lose Kyle? I think we just lost Kyle.
We
Nope,
heard
he's
Kyle.
back.
You said, "Get as connected as you."
and build those skills. Build that foundation.
There
Like
you go.
Napoleon Dynamite. Girls like guys with skills. All right,
Wow.
my advice for a wow. I can't hear someone say that without saying it too, man. I don't like it. It's like when the doctor hits your knee with that thing and it goes up on its own, involuntary. Wow.
Wow.
All right, my question here for a new person is simple. That 80-20 rule, Pareto principle, look that up. It basically states that in most situations in life, 20% of your actions are responsible for 80% of your results. So understanding what those key 20% is and spending most of your time there will get you huge results. For the majority of people listening to this, the people trying to get started, it's freaking house hacking. House hack. I am terrified that in the future, the government is going to get smart and say, it's very stupid that we give out 3.5% down payment loans or 5 or 10% down payment loans or 30-year fixed rates, and they're going to take it away. And I don't want us to look back at house hacking the way that we looked back at rates when they were low, the way that we looked back at short-term rentals when no one was doing them, the way we look back at 2010 real estate. It was like, why didn't I buy
I wish
more?
I did it. Yeah.
Yes. Like even right now, Christian and I at the One Brokerage are doing a lot of DSCR loans based on short-term rental revenue projections. That's not guaranteed to be around for a long time.
Yep. May not
So
be
the
available.
people that are like, I don't know if I want to pull the trigger, right around they decide that they want to, you can't get a loan and their debt to income ratio isn't high enough, and boom, they're left out of the party, and the people that have the means can get the assets.
Yeah.
You should be approaching house hacking the way that, like, what's a good example like of just a furious, I was trying to think of something funny, but I couldn't think of one right off the bat. Like
David couldn't think of an analogy. No way.
like a kid on the night before Christmas, man, you got to be chomping at the bit trying to get every single present that you possibly can.
There it is.
We should be greedy for house hacks. You should be getting a house every single year as a house hack. That is your 20%. And then anything else on top of that, sure, go put 20, 25, 30% down. Go do long distance investing. Go do Burr. I'm telling you, all the books that I wrote are secondary to the book I did not write, which is house hacking. It is the most powerful force in all of real estate investing. You could throw it up against anything. It's the best strategy for so many different ways. I would dare anyone to challenge me on that. I wish it was Burr because that's the book I wrote. House hacking is better. Just buy a house hack every single year. It is almost impossible to fail if you have half a brain. If you just buy a stupid home that doesn't work as a house hack, that won't work. If the house you're buying has more than one unit, if it's in a good location, you get to learn how to be an investor and a landlord on training wheels. You get to put incredibly low amount of money down. You had to pay to live somewhere anyway, so you're not even taking a big risk because you were going to be paying $2,500 a month in rent. Now you have a mortgage that's $3,500 a month. Like, okay, well, that's actually only $1,000 more than you were going to be paying, and you get to own, and you're probably going to get more than $1,000 a month in rent. I could go on. It's late. I won't. House hack. Everybody here, I just keep saying it because I don't want the day to come when everyone says, I wish somebody would have told me. I was doing this during COVID when people thought the market was going to crash, and I told everyone I could. It's not. Inflation is massive. The White Walkers are coming. Rally the people of Westeros. They need to know the White Walkers are coming. You need to be prepared for it. That was
house hack is our only defense.
That's it. House hacking is the wall,
Right.
right? It's the wall of the North. It's the only thing keeping you safe.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the same thing now. I hope we don't look back 10 years later and we talk about, I remember when you could get a house for only 5% down and the rate was fixed for 30 years. And then the government made it as low as they could.
Any market.
And people were dying to rent from you because they spent all their money on dumb things. And so they needed a place to live. Like all of these things we take for granted. They don't have to actually work that way. So
no,
that's what I would say.
Oh yeah, well, there's 3 quick tips. Right. I think that was Kyle asking for that, so hopefully that more than you asked for. But good question though.
Awesome. Well, this has been a very, very fun video. For those of you guys that came late, don't worry, you can hit the rewind button. You can watch the replay. Lots of really good content that we covered. David's new book talked a little bit about money-saving strategies, building skills, failing forward, and then obviously talking some really good stuff about some of your guys' deals and struggles and talking about interest rates rising, what goes into that, and being very smart with your approach to your real estate investing. So had a great week. That being said, we're going to be back here next week. So come back out, check us out on Friday. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye on behalf of David, Christian, and myself. We hope everybody else has a great rest of their week. See ya.
Hang on, Kyle. 1 second.
Oh,
David Green for Christian, the super sandwich maker, and Kyle, washboard core Rinky.
Oh, I got something to live up to now, man.
I love it.
Awesome. See you guys.
See you guys.
Chocolate chip killer.
Yeah.